that you've learned. So if you're doing, especially your Quizlets, even after you're out of school, you've done your 75 hours of instruction, that's all behind you. If you continue to do your Quizlets, there's no reason why you should not pass the PSI exam. But you do have to study, okay? I mean, just showing up for class and listening, and you got to do the ongoing studying. But I'm going to tell you, take that test as soon as you can, because that's when everything is fresh in your mind. Now, when you're going to do the real estate practice, you're going to see a lot of things that you've learned in fundamentals that is going to click, because now you've had a lot of the vocabulary, you have a lot of the concepts, and now as we move forward, you're going to understand how they all begin to relate to each other. Would you say that's true, Ken?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean,
It'll
yeah.
just all start blending.
I mean, yeah, like I was telling you today, like chapter units one through, I say 1 through 7 is kind of common sense, but then it gets harder. What you did yesterday and the day before, you got
A
a
lot of
lot
it,
of a lot of memorization.
there is. A lot of it is common sense, but maybe not if you haven't heard it at least once or twice, or you haven't read it at least once. But once you start reading something, you'll understand why it begins to make sense to you.
Yeah, definitely reread the book. That's what I've been. That's what I've done.
Well, even, if they do the Quizlets, and then if they need additional information, then going back to the book just to reinforce it, or maybe to look for more information in detail. Okay. So we're going to finish up with 12. 12 is very long, and I think we ended it right around cemetery broker, if I am not mistaken. Now, I don't. Okay, so in your test that you're going to be taking for fundamentals, I don't think there were any more than two questions out of Unit 12, but we still have to go through it. So after class tonight, you're going to get a link. If you decide that you want to move forward and you want to take the test, you feel comfortable, you certainly will be able to do that. If you feel you need more time, or maybe you want to do the Quizlets first. So the Quizlets, that is the pre-exam study. If you go through all of those definitions and you really get it, and you want to take the test on Quizlets before you move on to taking the actual test, you may want to do that, because if you're shying in one area or two areas in there, you'll see where maybe you need to put additional studying time into it. But, I've been through it. I've read through all three of the tests, and I didn't see anything in there that should be difficult. All right, we're almost there. Okay. So I want to talk about the cemetery broker. Probably none of you in the class is interested in becoming a cemetery broker. However, it could be one of the questions. Now, this is something I'm going to tell you. When these tests were made up, they were made up with questions that would likely be on your PSI exam, but they may not be, because the PSI exam, there's several versions of it. It rotates. Who knows which one you're taking? Um, Ken took it, but if he was to take it a week later, he probably would have had a totally different exam. Okay, so normally, what we're told from students is there really isn't that much math in there, but we will be doing the math going into the next class. That's unusual, that Ken has that many math questions, and I think they're just maybe randomly selected, however it is that they do it. Okay, so we're going to breeze through some of these requirements, because this is something I think you really need to read or study to get it in your head, and you'll have the time to do that. But for tonight, when you look at the exam, and you're taking the exam, whether it's tonight, whether it's over the weekend, or even next week, you're going to see a lot of questions that are going to be general questions, some things that we're going to talk about tonight, but you're not going to probably see anything in regards to like cemetery broker, or maybe some other requirement. do have to pass a written examination. Then you have the associate broker, kind of the same relationship that a associate broker that's selling real estate has to a broker, or a broker of record in real estate, same type of a relationship. So they're employed by and they work under the cemetery broker. They have to meet the same requirements as if they have a cemetery broker license. The salesperson, all right, a little bit different. They don't have to have the same qualifications. They will be working under the broker. They have to be 18 years of age. And they have to also, when they make their application, they have to get a letter from the cemetery broker saying that they have a good reputation and that the broker is going to actively supervise them and train them. And they don't have any education requirements. And then you have the builder owner salesperson. So they're going to work for a builder. And the builder has to be engaged in, and the builder has to be not licensed. So they're going to work for the builder. They're going to be a full-time person, employee of the builder, and they will be able to negotiate sales. They're going to be able to do the rent. They'll be able to do the sales on both ends, buyer, seller, leases. So they have all that responsibility. Now, they have to also be 18 years of age. Unlike when you're a broker, you have to be at least 21 years of age. The builder, owner, salesperson has to be 18. And the key thing here, builder, owner is not licensed, but they also must pass an examination. Okay, so then we have the rental listing referral agent. Basically, they do have to have an office. They don't work under a broker, and they cannot do leases. They cannot be involved actively in rentals, but they are brokering information to the public, which is permissible, but they cannot add on their list. It's their referral list that they come up with. They can, and then the, let's say an apartment complex says, yes, you can put us on the list. They can refer people over there. And if, say, an apartment complex says, no, we don't want to be on your list, then they're not allowed to put them on the list. So they also must complete 75 hours of classes, and they have to pass the salesperson's examination. Campground memberships. This is a little bit different. This is very similar to timeshares in a way. So people are buying into maybe units of membership in a campground. And so the salesperson does have to be working under supervision also of a broker. So they have interest in certain lots or maybe in units or time periods, much like your timeshare person. So a licensed broker or a salesperson or a timeshare salesperson does not need to possess a campground membership salesperson license to sell campground memberships. So once you're a realtor, if you decide to do that, you would be qualified to.
Hey, Jenny, I'm sorry, real quick. The one that is builder owner salesperson, I didn't really understand that one. What is builder owner? Like,
okay, you have a builder. Let's say usually they're smaller builders, and maybe they're buying a plot of land, they subdivide it. Maybe there's like 12 units, right? And so they have somebody, and I'll give you an example, right? There is a builder that does like a lot of developing, but small little parcels. They're developing in Bensalem, pretty well known, okay? His wife does work for him as an employee. He's not licensed, okay? So she's working under him as a salesperson, okay? But that's the important thing. The builder owner cannot be licensed.
All right.
Okay.
So
Is that like the Toll Brothers
Toll
and
Brothers
Ryan
is
Home?
pretty big. I would think that Toll Brothers, first of all, they're a corporation, but also they have salespersons that work for them. And I think all the bigger companies are corporations, and they work with licensed realtors. When I see somebody working for a builder owner, they're usually like smaller operations. Okay. So campground membership salesperson, again, they have to be 18 years of age and successfully completed 15 hours of campground membership sales course, and then on-site training for 30 days, and then actively supervised. But remember, again, if you are already a salesperson working in real estate or timeshare or you're a licensed broker, then you would automatically be, you would be employable with them. Okay, timeshares, we all know what timeshares are about, so we don't really need to go into that too much. Again, 18 years of age, complete 30-hour timeshare sales course, and then 30 days of on-site training. Now, timeshares, they do give a lot of training because they're very high pressured. Okay, they're very good at sales. And if you ever go to one of these appointments where they offer to give you free weekends or, a television or whatever, and you show up there, very hard to leave there until they have your signature on a contract. Because if the initial person who is highly trained cannot close you, then the manager will come over and, they'll say, well, let me talk to my manager and see if maybe he can cut a better deal for you. And they just like wear you down until you decide that you're going to buy with them. Okay. So we all know what they're about. I'm sure some of us even have timeshares. I know I do. Okay. All right. They don't need to take the 75-hour classes, and they do not need to pass an exam, but they are highly trained. So in your handouts, my suggestion is you can see what all the differences are of what we talked about today, what we were talking about last night. Whether, your age, now just now, like brokers, you can see, all 21 years of age. So just now, everybody else, it's 18. Tells you what kind of education and experience that you need. So that will help you too. And what you should be doing is, and it's something that, I have done myself, but I print up everything. And then I just hole punch it and I put it in the binder with little tabs so that if I need to get to something, I can get to it quickly. So if you're studying, you've done all your Quizlets and everything. And now that I'm thinking about it, I may do a separate Quizlet just for the license requirements. If you go through Unit 12, very lengthy Quizlet, okay? I may actually break some of them out and put them into a separate Quizlet just so you can focus on what the license requirements are. And that way it just gives you one go-to place. And I think it might make it easier for you. I'm not going to do it now because, we have a lot that we are going to be doing. But if I get time, I may do it over the weekend if I can do it quickly. But make sure you do print this out because you should be studying this. Okay, so now we're going to talk about activities, violations, and disciplinary actions and all that. Did somebody ask something? Okay, so RELRA is the Real Estate License and Registration Act, okay? And so unlawful activities or activities that maybe are, as a result of negligence, they're all covered under RELRA. And so this is an overview here of what we are permitted and not permitted to do. May not advertise or suggest they are engaged. And this will go into further detail as we go through here. Must be licensed at the time of service is offered and rendered. We kind of talked about that yesterday. Not entitled to compensation and may sue to recover payment for illegal services rendered. Again, we'll be talking about that. So, all right, we know that if you don't have a license, you are not supposed to be practicing real estate, and you could get yourself in a lot of trouble. They could revoke your license, or they could allow you to get your license and then turn around and suspend it, or they could fine you even. So that's something that you don't want to be doing. Now, there are exclusions for unlicensed activities. If you're working for a utility company, you're working for a corporation, you're a trustee in a bankruptcy, or maybe you are involved with an estate, you're an administrator, you're an executor, you're not required, obviously, to be licensed. So the first offense is $500 and up to 3 months in jail, maybe. They usually give you a slap on the wrist if they find you doing that the first time. The second time, they consider that a third-degree felony, and the fine is anywhere between $2,000 and $5,000, and imprisonment from 1 to 2 years. Now, I think if somebody did it one time, they probably would not do it again. And I have to tell you, I myself don't know anybody that has done it. I could see where it could happen if you wait to the last minute to take your classes and you don't get your license renewed in time. But that's something that you really want to be focused on when you're practicing. Don't do anything to let your license lapse. And honestly, most brokers, I think, do keep track of that. I don't know if they all do. Our broker does require us to send in when we take our classes and everything, and I think they keep a file on that. Okay, individuals and entities excluded. We went over that. If you're selling your own property, okay, this would be for FSBOs. You're a realtor. If you're a realtor, you shouldn't really be selling your own property anyway. But if it's a for sale by owner, they are allowed to sell their own properties. You're employed by a public utility company. Yes. Okay, we went over that. Okay, another exclusion, officer or employee of a cemetery company. Yes. An auctioneer. Well, they have a different type of a license anyway when they auction off real estate. Individuals who are employed by multifamily residential dwellings to manage properties. Okay. When they're employed, if they're not licensed, they can oversee, collecting the rent, keeping records and all that, but they're not authorized to enter the tenants into the lease. They can't do that unless they're actually, if they hold a license, yes, but if they don't, no. So they can't do any negotiating. Anybody that I know that has really actively been involved with rentals, I would have to say they probably have a license or they're working in a very limited capacity. And of course, they would have to also be supervised. Okay, so now the licensing procedures. We all know the Department of State, they issue the license. Every state is different. Some states have reciprocity. That particular state, you cannot be doing your primary source of business there. And I'll give you an example. I'm a realtor, let's say, and I decide for the winter I'm going to Georgia because I believe Georgia has reciprocity. My primary business is here in Pennsylvania, but now I'm going to go there for the winter. As long as I do the paperwork and provide to them what they need, then I would be able to practice down there. And that's fine. However, if I decide that now I want to move down there and all of a sudden Georgia is going to be the state where I am really planning on practicing my business, then I would need to go through the whole process of becoming a realtor there. No longer can I, use reciprocity. I would have to do whatever their state requirements are, which would be different than Pennsylvania. Okay, so
Hey, Jan,
yes.
can you explain reciprocity?
Reciprocity is an arrangement between states that permit realtors in other states to practice real estate.
Okay.
Okay, so I believe Delaware, New York, they have reciprocity. So if you call up the real estate commission, let's say in Delaware, and you say, I am a licensed realtor in the state of Pennsylvania, and I would like to start selling real estate in Delaware. What are the requirements? And what they would do is they would say, well, we're going to send you out a packet, and it's paperwork. They want to know all about your business in Pennsylvania, and it'll be forms that you have to complete. You're not going to have to retake, you don't have to go to school and do all the requirements as if you were living in Delaware. But then let's say you move to Delaware and that's going to be your primary location. Then you would have to take that instruction. And then all of a sudden, you're going to be governed by the guidelines of Delaware as if you were, if you're living there, working there and everything. Okay. Now, New Jersey, different. They do not practice reciprocity. So when I got my New Jersey license, I had to take additional classes, and then I had to sit for the exam in New Jersey. It's different. They accepted some of the credits that I did when I was in school, but not all of them. There were other courses in addition to. Their training is a little bit more robust, I think, and their requirements are more than they would be as if you were going for a license in Pennsylvania. So the point is, every state is different. They all have their own rules. So if you're looking to get a license in another state, if you don't want to go through taking all these classes again and sitting for the exam, maybe you may want to do reciprocity. But if you decide to switch over, you're going to be like everybody else, having to meet their requirements. Okay, so the Real Estate Commission. Real Estate Commission approves all the schools, and they set all the fees. They oversee disciplinary actions and the hearings if there's any complaints filed against a licensee. Their job is really to protect the public. All right, so that is one of their primary functions. All right, so the Real Estate Commission, and all this information, by the way, you're going to see in your Quizlets in 12, so it's all there. But they prescribe the form for the license applications. They do all the investigations. If somebody makes a complaint about an office, they have like auxiliary offices where they will come out, and sometimes they just come out to do spot checks, but they will come out to make sure that an office is running properly. Let's say they're doing a spot check. They may just walk in and say, we want to see everybody's licenses. Now, you may be working out of a branch office. If you're working out of a branch office, that broker has to keep your license in the main office, and then they keep copies in the branch offices where you might be employed. And they decide if they're going to accept the license or an application or deny an application. They're going to suspend you. They're going to revoke. So that's all under, their realm of authority. Their license period, and they have 11 members that actually oversee the Real Estate Commission. So your licensing is every 2 years on even years. Now, if you were in New Jersey, it would be every 2 years on odd years. So when you get licensed, your license is good up to May 31st of an even year. So you have to get all your CE credits done within that 2-year time period, which is 14 credit hours. All right. So we're in an odd year. You get licensed now. When we go into the even year next year, then you would have to renew your license. And in that time period, you do have to get your training in, your 14 hours. So first issuance does expire on the 31st of May. It does for everybody. This year, it expired at the end of August because of the virus. That's the first time I've ever seen that happen. But normally it is the last day in May. Okay, so when you go to renew your license, I renew mine online, but there's a form you can download. You can decide to mail it in with whatever the fee is. You can decide to fax it, or you can do it online. Online's the easiest way to do it. So, I just always do it online. Okay, so your 14 hours of education. This goes for whether or not you're a salesperson, you're a realtor, you're a broker. We all have to do our 14 hours of CE credit. So this is a little unusual. Now, I guess everybody is doing it online. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I do it in person. There's a lot of really great courses out there for us. This is the first year that it's called Triple Play. It's every December, the first week. It's like this huge convention that happens. Realtors come from all over down to Atlantic City at their convention center. So they have a ton of workshops and courses for us to take over a period of 3.5 days. You can go for 1 day, you can go for all 3 days. It's really up to an individual. But you can do, if you wanted to, all 14 hours at the Atlantic City Convention Center when Triple Play is held. Now, this year, they didn't have it because of the virus, and that's the first time in 100 years that they didn't hold it. So they did try to do something over the internet that was, I guess, in lieu of. I don't think it was all that successful, but they did do something. So normally, they're all done in person. However, there's a lot of schools that just do the CE credits online. So last year, I did mine online. And you do get a certification or a certificate they'll give you stating you did 3 hours and the date and where you took your, who you took your CE credits from, how many the CE credits are. Some of them are 2, some of them are 3, and then they have some that are 4 credit hours, but they have to be done. Now, if somebody from the Real Estate Commission calls you and says, we're doing a spot check, did you do your CE credits? And you said yes, the next thing is they're going to tell you that they want to see a copy of all your certificates. So just make sure that you put them in a file and that they're accessible in case you ever need them. I only had that happen to me one time, and that was years ago. So I do know they do it, and it's a random thing. Okay, so inactive license. If you decide for whatever reason you don't want to be a realtor at that point in time, you can do what's called escrowing your license. And so you send it back to the state and they make a note of it, and then you can remain inactive for a period up to 5 years. Now, if you decide to reactivate it within that 5-year period of time, all you would need to do is reapply, and you would have to make sure that you did your 14 hours of continuing education before you reactivate it. If you try to reactivate it after 5 years, they will not let you do that. So you're going to have to take classes again, and you're going to have to start as if you were starting from the beginning. You'll have to sit for another state exam and go through that whole process. Just make sure, unless you really want to leave the field, just make sure if you're escrowing that you take your license out of escrow before that 5-year period expires. Okay, so non-resident licensees, we already talked about this with the reciprocity. So it is allowed, in Pennsylvania, but again, not all states are going to permit that. So if it's something you're doing, you need to check with the states. Okay, so the intent of reciprocity is to allow licensees to practice in more than one state, not intended to circumvent the licensing requirements for the principal place of business. Again, you would have to seek your standard license if you were going to make the other state your principal place, and you have to pass their examination and fulfill what other requirements they have. So there are site requirements that a broker has to meet before they can open an office or while they're maintaining an office. So you have to have a licensed broker that would be in charge of the office and an actual physical location. The licenses of all the licensees, they have to be prominently displayed in the office. They will accept, and I think we did that in our last office, where everybody's license was all in presentation folders, so that if they came in and they wanted to say it, the person sitting behind the desk had access to the book. They could just pull the book out and they could go through and see if a licensee or how many licensees were active there in the office. Office must be devoted to the transaction of real estate business and must permit business to be conducted in privacy, and that includes computers. Every computer, they have to have passwords on them. They will go and they will check to make sure that the offices that will have locks on them. So anywhere the real estate business is being undertaken, it has to be within locked and secure areas of the building. Now, if there's a lunchroom, they don't care about that. If it's a conference room, they don't care about that. But if there's offices where records are kept, they do care about that. The business name. So when a broker has the business name up, the business name has to be exactly identical to how they have their license with the state. Same thing with you. When you're using your name, you can't use a nickname even unless your nickname is registered with the state. So however your business license is, that's how the business entity's name has to be. It's got to be displayed prominently, which of course, I mean, that's what they're in business for. So I'm sure they are all doing that anyway. Branch offices, okay. For a branch office to be legal, it also has to have its own separate license. Even though it's working under the main license, they also have to have a branch license. That branch office would also need to be supervised by the broker of record. Now, even though it's supervised by the broker of record, you could have an associate broker that is working under the broker of record manage the office, and that is permissible. Okay, so the change of broker's address. If during the course of business they decide to move, which my company actually did that about a year ago, they have to move everybody's license over and have them all reissued. So there are rules that govern that also. And that has to be done within a 10-day period of time. But I think what they did last year too, they made the move right around when we were getting our licenses reissued. So it would have had to be done anyway. It just had a different address. If you change your employment and you're working with one real estate office, you can only work for one real estate company. You can't work like part-time for Century 21 and part-time for Remax. They don't permit that. You have to work for only one real estate office. If you're moving, you do have to let the real estate commission know, and you have to do that, or you're supposed to do it within a 10-day period of time. Now, normally what happens is a new broker, you've met with them, you tell them, you know what, I want to come work with you. They'll take care of the paperwork for you. There is a fee when you're changing brokerages, but normally that's picked up by your new broker, and they will request your new license.
Janet, if you're doing the reciprocity, so let's say I'm selling here and I'm also selling in New Jersey, does it have to be with that one broker?
No, it doesn't. But keep in mind, there's no reciprocity in New Jersey. But
Right, I mean, like, I guess being licensed in both.
yeah, that's a good question. So I work in Pennsylvania for Realty Mark. I also work in New Jersey for Realty Mark. It's Realty Mark Associates. And, you know, in New Jersey, even though I'm with Realty Mark, if I decide that I wanted to work in Pennsylvania with them, but I want to work with, say, Berkshire Hathaway in New Jersey, I'm allowed to do that because it's in a different state. All the rules are different. And so my New Jersey license really doesn't have anything to do with my Pennsylvania license. But that's up to me. I don't have to work with Realty Mark. So if you're in another state, you can go with whomever you want to go with. But,
Gotcha.
okay, so if you're changing your license over, as soon as you know you're leaving, believe me, your new broker will take care of all that for you. And if you don't have your new license within 30 days, they really want you to contact them. So now we're going to talk about real estate documents and the escrow requirements, right? One of the most important documents that I'm going to talk about, believe it or not, it's not a contract, it's a disclosure. And so it's the consumer notice. And so what the law states is that we have to, as soon as we have any kind of interaction with a potential client, right, that involves real estate, we have to provide them with the consumer notice. The consumer notice actually explains the different types of agency. What is a buyer's agency agreement? What is a seller's agency agreement? What is dual agency? All this is contained within a 2-page consumer notice. And they do want it signed, right? Well, this is what's interesting. A lot of people with, let's say you're meeting them for the first time at a property, and now you whip out this consumer notice and you ask them, can I please have your signature on this? And you're going to give them a copy, and then you keep a copy that's been signed, or at least scan it in your phone or snapshot it or whatever, so you have proof that you gave it to them. Okay, you'll see people that don't want to sign it. And if they don't want to sign it, you have to explain to them, this is not a contract. This is not like a buyer's agency. It's a disclosure. And by law, I have to provide this to you. Now, if they still won't sign it, then what you do is you cross it out and say, refuse to sign. And then you would just ask them, do you mind just signing that you refuse to sign and just initial it and date it? Because I absolutely have to turn this into my office. Usually they will do that. Now, there are different documents that you may want to present to them, but early on, but that one is the most important because it's required by law. Okay, so there are documents that have legally required language in the documents. This would have to do if, well, what it focuses on for this particular one, it would be, let's say you're going to work with them and you're going to try to get them to sign a buyer's agency agreement with you, hiring you to represent them, all right? They're considered a customer until they sign a buyer's agency agreement. Once they sign the buyer's agency agreement, they now become your client. And so you have duties, additional duties and obligations that you would not have if they never signed the buyer's agent agreement. So, and at that point, you cannot discuss any of their business with anybody. It's kind of like equivalent to, when you go to, confession and a priest is hearing your confession or whatever, they're not allowed to repeat anything. Kind of the same concept. Whatever they tell you, that's between you and your client and not to be shared by anybody, unless you're working with the lender and, they have given their permission for you to talk to their lender. That's a different story. Okay, so the agreement of sale does have mandatory mortgage contingency language in there, and that is to protect them. There is a mortgage contingency date that will be in there, and it's a contingency so that if at any time they're cooperating through no fault of their own, they're declined for the mortgage, you will be able to get their money back for them, built into the agreement of sale. This is interesting. The disclosure when you're doing your comparative market analysis, okay? It's not an appraiser. We don't hold ourselves out as appraisers, but what we do is we look at the trend for the current market, and we are allowed to do them. Brokers' price opinions are similar. To do a broker's price opinion, they're called BPOs, and when a house goes into foreclosure, mortgage companies look to hire agents to do the BPOs, broker price opinions. The mortgage companies usually will give you a fee for maybe $50. They want you to go out. They want you to put something together. What is your opinion as to the value of the house? You're not going to gain access into the house more than likely, but you can drive around and take pictures and give an opinion as to what's going on in that area. Now, normally $50, a lot of work for $50. But what they do to compensate a lot of these companies, once you get involved with them, they will turn around and as a courtesy, give you that listing when it becomes available. But the tricky thing is this, not all real estate offices will allow you to do BPOs or broker's price opinions. And that is because there's additional liability that comes with that. And so a brokerage may decide that it's just too risky and they don't want you to do that. I believe that my office will not allow BPOs to be done. I think they may allow one person in our office to do it because he's been doing it a long time and he does have the experience. But a lot of offices will not. So you would, if that's something you want to do, you would have to ask before a broker hires you, do you allow your agents to do BPOs? Now you're just starting out, you're new, probably they would not allow you to do that unless you have experience. All right, agreement of sales contract disclosures required by cemetery brokers. So they have their own disclosures. Pre-agreement disclosures required at the initial interview. When you're doing your buyer's agency contract, there is something in there that says what your terms are, that they will be charged, for your services. Maybe when you go to settlement, there's going to be a conveyancing fee. All offices charge it, but they all have their own fees, separate fees. One office might do $350, another one does $4.25, another one does $250. It's really up to the office how they decide to do that. And then some, in addition to that, might have, some extra charges, probably not that outrageous, but we still have to let the consumer, the buyer, know what these are up front. So when I do a buyer's agency agreement, everything is very clear in there. So if I wind up towards the end of the sale, turning my charges in to the title company that are going to be on the closing disclosure, and they were to call me up and say, listen, what is this? I never agreed to give the company, then I would always turn around, or I could turn around and say to them, actually, when we first met, we went over that, and this is a fee that's charged by my company. If you don't agree to pay this, they still want that money, and then I will be the one that's ultimately going to have to pay it. I never really had anybody say anything to me about it because I think it's such an accepted practice. But just make sure when you start working with them that you're clear about it. And don't be afraid to disclose it because you have to. Estimates of cost and return for buyers and sellers. Now, when you're working with a client, if it's a seller, you're going to do what's called an estimated closing cost sheet. And it is kind of like a fill in the blank thing in the ZIP forms, which is, if you belong to a board, they give you these forms. And there's also one in, most of them are going to be in the forms that you're going to be using. Pretty much everybody, I think, use ZIP forms, and there's a few other companies out there, but you're sitting down with a prospective seller. Well, they're going to want to know what is your commission? And they're going to want to know, well, are there any other fees? And the answer is going to be yes. Now, if you're representing the seller, there's a resale certification that's going to be required. Either you're going to pay it up front and have them reimburse you when you go to settlement, or you can give them a link and say, look, there is a fee, for the resale cert. Do you want to just order it on your own? Okay.
What is a resale certification?
Well, they're called different things. They used to be called UNO in Philadelphia, and we still refer to them as UNO, but now they're called resale certifications. And what it does is it basically, in Philadelphia only, it's different in the counties, but in Philadelphia, you just plug the address in and all that, and it checks to see, are there any violations on the property? Unusual, but I've had them where they came back with violations, and those violations have to be cured. Then that's another step. Your owner is going to have to get in touch with L&I, and then they got to come out to make sure whatever the violations were, that they're cleared. And if they owe them any money as a result of that, then they're going to have to pay that fine, that penalty, or whatever. That's in Philadelphia. Now, moving into the counties, all right, we call that, and they're all the same thing basically, but they're known by different names, a certificate of occupancy. And so the certificate of occupancy is done differently in all the different townships. They all have their own rules. But essentially, some of the townships will physically send out an inspector to inspect the house and the property to make sure that it's safe and it passes all their requirements. Now, I just sold a house in Delaware County. Very interesting. They came out to inspect the outside of the house, and they didn't like a block of the sidewalk. They said it was a tripping hazard. And so we had to get somebody out there, or the seller really had to get somebody out there to take care of that. But they wouldn't go inside of the house because of the virus. So what they did was they issued what's called a conditional UNO. And that means that they issued a certificate of occupancy with conditions, which means that the buyer should not live in the house until all conditions are cleared. But because they're the ones that did not want to or allow their inspectors to come into the house, and they're the ones that issued the conditional one, they allowed the buyer to move into the house under the condition that when all the restrictions are lifted, that the current buyer will now call up the township and say, I understand restrictions are lifted and I need to get an inspector out here to inspect the house. Then the inspector will come out, they'll make sure that there's GFIs within 6 feet of a water source. They're going to check the heating system. And so they go through to make sure that the house is livable, right? And it meets all the requirements. Now, another township will do something different. They don't even want to go in the house. They'll just say, send us a chimney certification, we want a heating certification, and we want an electrical certification. And you provide that to them, and along with their fee, and then they just give it to you. And then some of the townships say, no, we don't issue them. And they don't even want to be bothered. So no matter where you're selling, Philadelphia, there's a site, we go to it, probably one of the easiest ones.
And you said that you coming out your pocket to pay for that? How much is that?
Okay, in Philadelphia now, I think it's $125. If you don't want to do that, not all realtors do, then you would just say to your client, we have to get, we have to have this for settlement, and this resale certification cost $125. I'm going to send you a link, and you just go on there and order it. Okay. That's 50-50. And some offices, okay, it's mandatory that the office, they're going to ask you for your credit card information. They keep it on file. So if they have to order it, they will charge you for that. And then you got to go back to your client and make sure that they compensate you at settlement, and that, you don't forget about it. Okay.
Wow. So your broker wouldn't taking care of that. That's you. That's all you.
It's your client. Yes. Either your client's paying for it,
Wow.
you're paying for it and getting reimbursed.
And
Sorry.
the title company, they don't look into nothing like that. I would think that the title company would look into something
They
like
want
that.
it. The title company is going to ask you for it, more than likely. Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But they don't want to pay for it either. All right. So you have to give your buyer also an estimated closing cost sheet. And if you remember, we were kind of talking about this in other chapters. And I think we talked about it last night too, very briefly. But, I go in, you'll go in, and you're going to prepare your estimated closing cost sheet on behalf of your buyer. You'll have your pre-approval. You would have already asked what is the prevailing interest rate that you're going to be charging the client. You'll prepare it, but ask the lender. So today I did ask for a pre-approval for somebody, and I said to the lender, and don't forget the LE. Need that LE. And he's like, for how much? I'm like, give it to me for $210, right? I don't know if my client is going to buy a property for $210, but I know that there's important information on there. So when he decides to buy a property, and let's say it's $200, I can take the information off of his LE and then run my own numbers and then look and see, are they close to each other? Because if they're not, that means something's wrong, and either they're wrong or I'm wrong. And, you have to give this to your client, right? Usually I do give them the LE, and I have the lender do it, and I make them initial it or sign it through DocuSign, and then I'll do my own too. Because sometimes at the end, they can't rerun it, and you need those numbers, like how much are they going to need to bring to settlement. And let's say it's kind of like the last minute and numbers are changing. Even though the closing disclosure was issued, the numbers are changing, and your seller, or your buyer, I should say, is freaking out because you haven't told them how much money they need to bring to the settlement table. You need to pull out that LE and look at it and say, well, when we first went under contract, this is the numbers that we went with. So I'm going to tell you, at least bring this much to the settlement table, or I might even tell them to bring more, and they may get money back even. I don't like doing it that way, but sometimes you have to do it that way because the lender and the title company, they just haven't given it to your client. And I hate it when they do it the last minute, like the night before, the morning of, and then you're really freaking out. But you don't see that as much as you used to since the laws changed. Okay, and just make sure that you have your fees in there. Don't forget to put your fees in there, or your your broker is probably going to charge you for it, and then you'll be paying your clients fees. So just be careful. And if you're representing the seller and your seller has agreed to give the buyer, say, a home warranty, make sure that's on the sheet there too, and they're being charged for it. Because if not, and they're still obligated and they don't want to pay for it for whatever reason, now you're going to be paying for it. Okay. Which you may want to do as a courtesy anyway to your client if you're making a nice commission. That would be, a business decision that you would make. The rental listing referral services, this is the language, that they are obligated to put on their documents, that they're only a referral service, business. That's all that they're doing. They're not acting as a real estate salesperson or a broker, and that basically, they're providing information. But this is the verbiage that has to go on their contracts. All right, timeshare and campground contracts, a little bit different, okay? than doing regular real estate. Once a contract for real estate is executed by both parties, it's a binding contract. And I had a client, I don't know, maybe during the summer. And so she agreed to buy a house, and then she changed her mind. And then she called me up and said, well, I have until the 5th day to cancel the contract. And the answer is no, you don't. Okay. That only applies to timeshare and campground contracts. It does not apply to regular agreements of sale for real estate. All right. So you got to know the difference there. So they can cancel from up to midnight of the 5th day. Now, you're going to see that if you do buy a timeshare and you want to do that, they are supposed to be putting their notices on there, and it has to be obvious, you know, what the requirements are, where you have to do it. Will have to be in writing, and my recommendation would be if you have somebody that's involved with that, they would send it certified mail and then with a return receipt to prove that they did what they were supposed to do. And then the money has to be returned back to them, refunded within 10 days after receipt. That if there were promotional materials, the person does get to keep them. They can't ask for it back. So document procedures. Licensees must enter their contracts. We all know this in writing, can't be verbal. But every party must get a contract. Anything they sign, they have to get a written contract, right? A lot of these clients are signing these documents and they're doing it electronically, but they should still be getting the whatever it is that they're signing. Sometimes what I do is I just print everything up, and when I meet them at the closing table, I just hand them the envelope and I say, I know you already have this, whatever, for your records, just, you know, keep them in your file, okay? Two things with this, you should. Now, I have records I've kept that go back into, I don't know, before 2010, I'm sure. But in the beginning, because we weren't so computer oriented like we are now, I still somewhere in storage have boxes of my original sales, which at some point, I guess, you know, I need to get rid of them. But now to keep it online, it's not a big deal because you're automatically, you know, you're probably going to use the cloud. So you're automatically putting everything up there in the cloud on a secure space. But your broker has to keep these documents. Now, my office requires certain documents, but they don't require all the documents I give to them. They require certain basic documents. But a lot of these sales can become more complicated. And so if that happens, I just keep sending them all the documents, and I figure they can decide what they want to do with them because they're legally obligated to keep them for the 3-year period of time. But if the commission ever came in and they wanted to see these documents, they need to produce them. And then for yourself, okay? Now, you're working with somebody and I don't know, you had them sign the consumer notice, but they never really became a client. You never sold them anything. You're still supposed to keep your consumer notice for at least 6 months. Responsibility of the deposits. Okay, so your broker has to keep a separate account. It's called an escrow account, and money that is given to your broker as a result of an earnest money deposit or as a result of maybe a rental security, he can't commingle either one of them. So the money can't go into his personal account, can't go into their operating account. Any money that comes in has to go into that escrow account. Now, for rentals, that has to be done in a totally separate account, an escrow account just for the rentals. It can't go in with a regular real estate account. And everything that goes in there has to be accounted for. Who it came from, the date that it came in, what property it's attached to. Very careful records need to be handled. And, you know, usually a lot of this is done now electronically. But I know in my office, the first thing that they do is they write it in a book that they received it, what day they received it, how they received it, and all that. But then they make a copy of it. It's scanned, and then it goes out to the realtors. And then there's the electronic copies that are, it goes and is uploaded electronically. So if the escrow account, because there are service charges that they charge every month and he has to put money into the escrow account, they're allowed to do that. That would be considered a business expense. But that money cannot come out of that account unless there's a settlement and you need to take that check to settlement, or unless both parties agree to it, because maybe it has to be a legal reason. Maybe they couldn't come to terms with each other when it came to what maybe the buyer is requesting from the seller for repairs as a result of a home inspection, and the seller doesn't want to do the repairs, and the buyer says, well, I'm not interested in buying the property then. Well, okay, so then you would do what's called a termination and release agreement, and it's giving the authority for the broker or whoever has the money to release the agreement back to the buyer, okay? Now, if your buyer just decides he doesn't want to buy the house and there's no valid legal reason, really the seller doesn't have to sign the paper. But then on the other hand, the seller doesn't get the money either. You got to try to negotiate it out, or it could wind up having to be decided by the court. That's the other way the money can come out of the escrow account. Normally there's a meeting of minds and the money is just released. If it's going to be held for more than 6 months, it should go into an interest-bearing account, but again, they're not making much money. And you would see that maybe if you're representing a builder and the property won't be built for another 6 months, 9 months, or whatever, and they're putting like $25,000 down, we'll say, well, then they would put that into an escrow account and it would bear interest. And that would go back to the buyer. That's the other thing. If you take somebody's check, there's a form, it's called an EMD, earnest money deposit form. Your client has to give you authority to take the money so that you can deliver it to whomever you're going to deliver it to. Now, normally, if you're working with a buyer, that check is going to go to the listing broker, and then they keep it in their escrow account. However, our company just had a new policy, and the new policy is they don't want it to go to the listing broker. And there are reasons for that. And it's not that they're illegal reasons, but a lot of times you have these selling agents and they forget to request the money out of the escrow account, and they show up at settlement and they don't have the money. And now they have to have somebody rush the check over to them, or you have to postpone settlement, or they really have to agree to upfront their commission to be held until, the check comes in. So they want whoever the title company is going to be, that your buyer is going to elect, they want the title company to really hold the money. And ultimately it makes sense because that's who's going to collect the money anyway. All right, the broker, we just talked about that. They have to maintain records. That's really important. Okay, escrow management.
Janet, all this stuff that they have to hold on to, is it kept in a computer, or they have files for each client, or what?
I think it depends on how the offices are being managed. Some of them, I would say pretty much everything is kept up into the cloud, and very little is kept in their offices. We do both. Okay. So if a check goes missing, I run over to, the person that takes all the money. She works for the title company, any checks that come in. And so I run up to her and I say, oh my God, there's a check that went missing somewhere. I have no idea when it came in. I don't know anything about it. She'll pull out her book and she'll say, yes, it came in on such and such a date and I gave it to so-and-so. Then I got to run over to so-and-so and say, what did you do with the check? And don't think this doesn't happen. It does happen. I had this happen twice this year. So for me personally, I changed how I do my own business. I don't tell my clients anymore to mail the check in. I ask them when I meet you, please give me the check. So what I do is I hand deliver it to a person. That way I can make somebody accountable. And I usually just walk in and I'll say, here's the check for such and such a property. Okay. And then I make a note in my phone to myself that on that date I gave so-and-so the check. Okay. We had a check that was sent to our Center City office, which never showed up in our Huntington Valley office, and everybody was blaming everybody. And then 6 months later, it winds up on this, I don't know, on somebody's desk in the Center City office. That was not a pretty sight. I wasn't there for that, but I know the owner of the company was not happy. Me, now what I do, I walk into the title company and I just say, you know, my property, you know, that I have ordered title on, here's the check. And then I take a scan of it and I say, okay, I'm giving you the authority to supervise this check and to put it into your account so it's available for settlement. So this way, hey, if they lose the check, they're going to have to make good on that. Okay, in co-broker situations, and every office is going to be different. So it's going to be whatever your employing broker is going to tell you their rules and regs are for that particular office. That's what you're going to be doing. Unless you decide that you feel more comfortable letting the title company hold it and it's in the contract and your broker is okay with it, then, you know, that's fine. Because when you go to settlement, the title company is getting the money anyway. So I think it's a good business practice myself. In co-broker situations, money tendered to the selling broker is turned over to the listing broker. You must have written notice to the buyer the funds will be held by another party, and the buyer must acknowledge this in writing. And that's what your whole deposit money notice is about. Now, if you're a dual agent or you're working with a co-listing agent in your office, that doesn't apply because the broker is the one that owns all these sales. And so it wouldn't even make any sense. He's representing, you know, the buyer, he's representing the seller. You know, he's not guaranteeing, you know, the deposit, that he received the deposit money and he has the authority to receive it because he's representing both parties. So. Okay, the escrow management, deposit money. As soon as that little puppy hits your hand, you got to get that right over so that they can put it into the escrow account by the end of the next business day. Now, the exception is this. Let's say you're representing a buyer and they give you a check and you know there's like 6-8 offers going in. The listing broker doesn't want to see 6 or 8 checks coming into their office. So what you would do is you would just ask your client, is it okay if I hold this unless they accept your offer? And, you know, they're going to say yes. And so you just say, can you do me a favor, text it over to me, send me an email saying it's okay, and then I'll get the other side to agree to it. So you have something in writing saying that, you know, that's permissible. And then if they don't accept the offer, when you see your client, you just give the check back to them. Or what I do is I'll just say, write a check out and do me a favor, hold on to it, just snapshot it over to me so I can provide it to the other office. But I don't want to take your check unless I know the offer is really going to be accepted. But what you need to take away from here, 1 business day, okay? And then we talked about how it can be legally withdrawn. Rental management account, it is separate from the operating account, separate from your real estate account as well. Okay, so the permits licensees to form different types of relationships with your consumer. And this is part of what you're doing when you provide them with your consumer notice. You're giving them the terminology and the definitions as to what the different fiduciary duties are to the consumer. It goes over what a seller agent is, buyer agent, dual agent, designated agent, and the transaction licensee agency. Print this page up too, because you should know what the differences are. Some of these more than likely are going to be on your PSI exam, so you should understand them. They're very simple, but you still need to know them. So the consumer, the consumer is a person that's going to be hiring you. They're also going to be your principal. They're going to be your boss, basically. And so they would be considered the principal, selling agent. That would be you if you're representing the seller. And then if you're a buyer agent, which I don't see on here, but if you're working for the buyer, then you would be considered a buyer agent. Sub-agent is working for the other agent or the other broker. So an example of that would be the listing broker, okay? The listing broker is the one that takes the listing, advertises the property. You come along with your buyer. Now you're the buyer's agent, but the broker now is going to be the sub-agent or the sub-broker to the overseeing broker. So when that listing agreement is signed, the listing agreement is going to say that ABC Real Estate, okay, they're going to be the broker that is going to be collecting at the time of settlement the commission, and then they agree to share it with the sub-broker, who would be the co-operating broker, basically. Dual agent, we know that, a dual agent, you're representing the buyer and the seller, the tenant and the landlord. Fine, but you have to disclose it. It has to be in writing. There is a place on the agreement of sale that does explain this, and you're checking off these boxes. You're working buyer agent, seller agent. As a dual agent, you're working as a designated agent. A designated agent really means that your office has multiple agents, okay? Your client expects you to be their designated agent. Otherwise, the broker can decide that any other agent in the office, he could delegate that particular sale to, because he's in charge of all these sales. And so the agreement of sale makes it very clear that they're designating you to be their agent. Transaction licensee, this is kind of when maybe somebody's calling you up and saying, listen, I want to sell my house, but I have a buyer. Can you do the paperwork? And you might say yes, and I charge $1,500. And if you want me to attend your settlement, it's going to be $1,800. Okay, that's going to be up to you. However, okay, with that being said, I've done it. I don't like doing it because I think for a very little nominal amount of money, you leave yourself open to legal liability. And I'm going to tell you why. I had this happen a few months ago. A client, I sold her house. This is one of her properties. This one she's going to get rid of. She comes to me with a person who was like flipping clueless as far as being a buyer. So the first thing I said to her is, well, who are you financing your mortgage with? Oh, I don't have anybody. I'm like, okay. I can refer you to 3 different lenders and, pick one of them that you feel comfortable with. Okay. I need a pre-approval. Next, I have lenders calling me. She doesn't know what she's doing. We've been asking her for this. She's not providing it. So now I'm calling her and saying, listen, I still don't have that pre-approval. They're still waiting for certain documents. Now, I'm going over the terms of the agreement of sale, and I said, are you going to do I know this is an as-is sale, but are you doing a home inspection? Because by law, you're entitled to do that. Oh, I don't know anything about that. Seller never said anything. Yeah, okay, I want to do that. All right. So now I become further and further, I'm going down this rabbit hole where now I'm giving her advice as if I was representing her as her agent. And it started making me really nervous because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this was supposed to be a simple paperwork thing. And now it's turning into me telling her she needs a pre-approval. The next thing she's asking is, well, can you tell me how much I need to bring to settlement? Now I'm like, oh my gosh, now I'm going to have to do an estimated closing cost sheet. And I'm thinking, if this goes sideways, I now have all this legal liability. And I'm acting basically as a dual agent because I'm working with the seller, telling the seller certain things. And so I'm like, this really isn't acting as a transaction licensee. And so it didn't work out. When I tell you I was relieved, you have no idea. That made me nervous. That was a very fine line. And interestingly enough, about a week after that, there was an opinion that came out through the Board of Realtors in Bucks County, and they had a whole thing about transaction licensees and how there's a lot of legal liability there. And I'm reading and I'm saying to myself, no kidding, this is like something I don't think I want to do again. So you got to be careful. All right, this is the consumer notice. Broker determines the roles that licensees may assume. All right, your first substance discussion is when this is due. Well, usually it's the first time that you're meeting the client in person. Really, we're not supposed to even talk to them about very much on the phone, which is why I normally do meet somebody once at a property. I won't meet them more than one time, though. If they're not already pre-approved, then I may meet them, but in the meantime, I'll say, okay, if you're not pre-approved, is it okay if I have a lender contact you? Hopefully, they're okay with that. But I will meet them one time just to get to know them, to give them, the consumer notice, make sure they sign that. If they look like there's somebody that really is serious about buying and I think they're going to be qualified, then I will do the buyer's agency contract with them. All right, this is going to be, these are on the Quizlets, but read through them. They're also in your book. What are your responsibilities and what kind of duty do you owe to them, to your consumer? Reasonable professional skill and care, being honest in your dealings. You're going to present all the offers in a timely manner. You're not just going to let them sit around. Everything has to be presented. If you don't think it's a good offer, so what? It may not be a good offer, but you're legally responsible for providing that document to your client. Now, I'm going to tell you, you could have an agreement of sale and you can be negotiating on that agreement of sale. And now you have another agreement that's coming in that looks like it's better than the one you're negotiating on. But you're already so, into this other agreement, but nothing has been signed yet. You have to present your client with that offer because there's no agreement that has been made, no contractual agreement that has been entered into. All right. Comply with the Real Estate Disclosure Act. You will know you're working with a seller. Got to get them to do that. You're working with a buyer. A lot of times they're not up there uploaded where they're supposed to be. You call the other agent. They say, well, I didn't get one yet. Okay. Just make sure you put something in the agreement of sale, some kind of a clause that says they have to provide that to you within maybe 5 business days or, your sales contingent upon that. You cannot let your client close without providing them. It's not even considered a valid agreement unless they turn over that seller's disclosure to you. Accounting for all money received. Yes. All right, proper interview information at the initial interview. Yes. Make sure you get that consumer notice signed, and you would hope that they're going to sign a buyer's agency agreement with you. Some may not right away until they get to know you a little bit better. Some of them, what you can do in that situation, just say, hey, I just need you to sign it for this one property. And if you agree to work with me, we can change the date on it. But if not, that's okay. Then just sign it for this one property. And actually, when I first started out, I did have somebody do it for that one particular property, and he didn't even want to do that. And I said to him, well, okay, you're going to have to leave now. And he said, wait a minute. He said, you're not going to let me see the house if I don't sign this? And I said, yes, that's what I'm saying. And he said, wow, all the other realtors that have showed me houses, they never asked me to sign something like that. I'm saying, I wonder how many agents he's been working with. And I said to him, well, I'm sorry. That's just the way, I practice my business. And it's the way it is. Call up one of the other agents and you'll just have to come back and see it another time. And he didn't get mad. He just started laughing. And he said to me, you know what? He goes, I really want you to be my realtor. And he said, I'm going to sign it. He said, but let's do 6 months. And I'm like, hey, I'm okay with that. And I did sell him that house too. So you just want to make sure that if your office requires it or you want to hold on to that person, you need to get them to sign that. Okay, conflicts of interest, we talked about that. If you're involved in, you're actively involved, it's your house or you're buying a house, that has to be disclosed. You are representing a family member, you have to disclose that. You are representing your brother and you're advertising, you even have to put in the advertisement that, that you have a relationship as a realtor to the seller of the property. Yeah, you can get your license suspended if you start giving legal advice and somebody turns you in. They can suspend your license. They can even fine you. That's a real big thing. You don't ever want to do that. I know I keep talking about it, and that's because it's really that important, and it's probably going to be on the state test. It could be on your test later, today, tomorrow. Okay, information regarding the status of the transaction. You just make sure you have good communication with your clients. Hey, just wanted to let you know that this happened. Just wanted to let you know that that happened. Got an offer in. That whole thing with communication with your clients, extremely important. Okay, staying on top of all the tasks that need to be done before settlement. Keep track of those dates. It's called Ametry, and that's a service that I use. Sorry. I'll go in, type all the dates in there. And so it kind of reminds me all the time, this is coming up or that's coming up. And I try to stay on top of the lender, letting them know in 3 days mortgage commitment is due. I stay on top of the other realtor. Ultimately, it's a little extra work, but it'll save you a lot of heartache later.
What's it called again?
It's called Folio, and it's by Ametry, Folio, and it's by Ametry. I pay $25 a month for it. If you're doing one sale, it's easy to keep track of it on your calendar. But if you're going to be involved in doing all different types of real estate and you have 5, 6, 7 different sales going on at one time, which you could, boy, to remember those dates and stay on top of them, not so easy to do. Timely presentation of all offers and counter offers. Hey, if I get an offer, I look it over to see what's in it. I'll call my client up and say, hey, listen, I got an offer. And this is what the offer is, basically. I go over, not every single date, but I go over the fine points. Just got an offer for $200,000 with a deposit of $5,000. They want to close in 2 weeks. They are doing inspections, but they're not doing radon. And just like the real salient points, I'm going to send you an email so you can take a look at it. And if you're in agreement with the terms, then, I'll have you sign off on it. But review it. If you have any questions, call me. Call me anyway. Okay. Okay. Misleading. You don't want to. No misleading information. No assurances that you cannot follow through on. Be careful about what you're representing to them, because that can come back to you. Conflict of interest, we talked about that. You have ownership interest, have to disclose it. Everything's got to be in writing. Dual agency. Oh, I don't think there's really anything wrong with dual agency as long as you feel and you think that you can represent both parties equally. I normally, if I'm doing dual agent, there's some things I do. For instance, okay, I don't want to look like I'm favoring one party over the other. So I'm making more of a commission, obviously, because now I'm handling both ends. Maybe I'll cut my commission a little bit with the seller. What I do is I will, to help them both out, I will pay for a home warranty. And so I do that in case anything happens or anything gets overlooked. Nobody can come back to me and say, well, you should have known because you know the seller, you're representing the seller. You should have known that this was wrong with the house, or you should have had them take care of this, or, something like that. I just do it. It's good business practice, I think. But all the emails, they're both copied in on all those emails going back and forth. So the right hand knows what the left hand is doing. Anybody has a question, they can certainly call me, but then I will put it into an email and I'll send it to both parties. If there's an issue, maybe the seller tells me, I have an issue, this happened. I'll say, not a problem. I have to disclose this to the other party. And just tell me, in writing, you can text me, I don't care, but just give me something saying that, we had the conversation, you're okay with it. And so as long as you do it correctly, I think it's fine. But be aware that if it's not done correctly, you could wind up in trouble too. And I know we talked about this, but not all states allow dual agency. We do in Pennsylvania. Any affiliations? Okay, so your broker probably has affiliations with a title company, or sometimes even with maybe a lender that they allow to be in the office, and they pay them rent or whatever. If there's any business affiliations, they have to disclose that. This is a good one. Advertising and solicitation. If you're going to solicit, you cannot be harassed. You're soliciting a sale, a listing. There is a rule for harassment. You can't be like constantly, you have a for sale by owner. You can't be calling him like every day and then emailing them and then showing up at their door because you think if you're going to be really aggressive in your marketing that's going to work for you. Usually it's a turnoff, but also you're not allowed to do that. And if they could prove it, you could wind up having your license suspended. So you don't want to be doing that. You cannot take it upon yourself to just put a sign on somebody's lawn unless you have the authority to do so. So when you're on a listing appointment, you need to ask your client, do you or do you not want a sign on your lawn? Don't just assume, okay, that they're going to say yes and you roll up with the sign, and before you knock on the door, the sign's in their grass or on their lawn. You would be surprised how many people don't want signs on their lawn because they don't want the neighbors to know that they're moving. I am always floored by this. But I will tell you, if I have a vacant property, I don't put signs on the lawns. I did at one point, and that didn't go too well, and the sign was taken on top of it. So if it's a vacant property, I automatically tell them, do yourself a favor, don't advertise that your house is vacant. We don't want any signs on the lawn. Are you okay with that? Okay. Now, if they insist on it, well, okay, I would probably try to talk them out of it and explain to them why, but it's really about your client. If your client doesn't mind that a sign goes on the lawn, it could be free advertisement for you to pick up some buyers. Okay, rental listing referral. Again, they cannot put anybody on their list that says they don't want to be on it. All right, the brokerage companies, they can only advertise under their legal name that they're doing business under. Okay, blind ads are strictly prohibited. So if you get a listing and you're going to put it in Craigslist and you think you're going to have all these people calling you because you're going to come across as if you're the property owner, not allowed. And they're very strict guidelines for how we advertise. So on all pieces of advertisement, your broker's name has to be on there, and the county where they operate, their business, and where you're working out of as well. But your name cannot be more prominent than the brokerage. So you can't. What?
If I'm renting out my own property and I'm a real estate agent, do I need to let the tenants know that I'm an agent?
Yeah, you absolutely have to. Sure. Yes. If you're going to advertise it, even you're advertising it online, you're advertising it in a local paper, you would have to put in there that you are an agent. It has to be disclosed.
What about if you? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Even if I'm not dealing with my broker, like the.
If you have a real estate license, okay,
Right.
you are required to do that. If somebody turns you in, your license will be suspended. So they may take pity on you because you're new. Maybe they'll just fine you.
Okay.
Okay, don't do it.
I'm
Okay.
saying, Janet, even cops take off though. Cops be once they done for the day, they done for the day. You can't even get them to come back outside and put their badge on when they clock out.
Okay, this is a full-time business. And when I say full-time business, I mean, you'll see, you're going to live it. You're going to breathe it. You're going to sleep it. It'll be on your mind when you go to sleep at night and the first thing you think about in the morning.
I feel like that's the case now.
Yes, that's exactly what it's going to be like. What?
We're already sleeping it and breathing it. It's haunting me in my sleep, these words and these chapters.
You know what? That's actually good, because you know what that tells me? It tells me that your brain is actually taking that information and storing it in your memory. That's not a bad thing, just so you know. Okay.
Janet, how does that work? Say if you have rental property before you obtain your license, do you have to disclose afterwards? If you have someone under a lease and then you get your license after, say, a lease was signed, do you know how that works?
I would disclose it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I would, just keep yourself out of trouble.
Right.
You don't have to get in trouble with the real estate commission, believe me.
Okay.
Okay, so you're doing advertising. Let's say, and let me tell you, your advertising, it's your name, you're paying for your advertising. You still have to put your broker's name and information there too. Your font size cannot be larger than their font size. It cannot be bolder than theirs. It has to be quid pro quo. What's good for them is good for you. What's good for you is good for them. Can't be anything other than that. And believe me, I'm going to tell you, you know who's going to turn you in? I'll tell you who's going to turn you in. Other realtors will turn you in. I mean, I wouldn't do it, but I know they do it. I've seen other realtors that pull other realtor signs out of the ground, even if they're doing like an open house or whatever. They're not all like that, but you will have realtors out there that will say, hey, wait a minute, he's advertising, and why is his name larger than the brokerage and it's bold and everything? There'll be somebody out there that will report you, believe me. Bad practice, just don't do it. If you have a nickname, your name is John, but they call you Jack. You can't put Jack so-and-so on the sign unless your nickname, okay, has been registered with the state. All right. Okay. What needs to be on electronic marketing websites? Basically, you follow the same rules. But if you have a website, down bottom, at the bottom of the page, you're going to have your information on there, but you have to have, there's language that has to be in there. But aside from that, the broker's name has to be in there along with the city, and, the state, the county, wherever they're doing their business. Now they're saying they recommend even putting the country in there. I mean, I don't do that. I don't think it's necessary, but certainly you can, and it has to be somewhere. It could be on the top of the page, or most people I see it on the bottom of their page, but it's got to be on every single website page. If you're sending out emails even, okay, you have to put your information. I just have it in my signature line, but you don't have to do it with every single email, because if they're threading and you have like 10, 13 emails, nobody wants to see all your information over and over and over again. But the first time that you're sending out that email, make sure it's in there, so that at some point, if they need additional information about you, they can find it. I have my name, my company's name, where I'm licensed, my license numbers, they're all in the bottom of my email.
Hey, Janet, one more question. Let's say, for example, like the local basketball team asks for your advertisement. Do I need to take my ad to the broker and get an approval, or can I just do it without it?
Yeah, I'm sure your broker is going to require it. I had my website, which I don't know. I decided to change it. I don't know why. I like my website, and I may go back to it, but I took it out with the MLS. Just that one little change. I don't even have it listed right now because I've been really busy and I haven't had a chance to really set it up and let the broker take a look at it so he can approve it. Okay? They want to see everything. If you're going to advertise something, they want to see it. So if I think I'm going to advertise something for like one of my properties, I attach it to an email and I'll just say, Ray, please review and approve. Send it out to him in the morning. I'll say, looks good. That's all I need. But I still have to run it past him. It's his business. Just remember, if you get in trouble, chance he could be in trouble too. So you just want to be careful about that. And whoever is going to hire you will probably tell you any advertisements are going to have to go through either them or maybe somebody they've designated in the office there, like an office manager. All right, we see these lotteries, these contests, they're, inducements to use them as a realtor, right? Very strict guidelines for this. They have to put the description of the gift, they have to keep records. If they're doing mailings, they have to put the people's name, and address where they're sent to. They have to give everybody notice, what is the fair market value, how many of these are going to be giving out, when they're going to be deciding who the winner is, what are the odds. I never got involved with that. It seemed like way too much work. Award disclosures. Okay. If somebody turns you into the commission, you've got to be able to produce all these records. All right. Disclosures must be made. If there may not be an award available, maybe you were giving a TV and that particular TV is no longer around, you have to disclose that too. What the odds are of winning, any fees, okay? So somebody signs up and maybe they want a TV, but you're going to charge them for shipping. You got to disclose that up front. Advertising sales volumes. This has to do more with the brokerage, okay? So brokers love to, brag that they're just like number one in their county or, whatever. They may be number one in the state, as an example, but they can't say that they're number one. They can only include transactions that have closed, can't be ones that are still in the process. They have to have closed, and they can only be for that specific county where they're advertising. So if they say number one in Bucks County, they can only include the sales that have closed in Bucks County. All right. Maybe they're number 40 in Philadelphia, but number one in Bucks County. They can't say we're the number one realtor, right? That's like a form of puffing. They're not allowed to do that. Harassment, we already talked about that. Don't harass a prospective client. that will get you in trouble. Panic selling, we all know about this, and panic selling can be for different reasons, but really it's about you giving information, especially, false information or information that is going to discriminate, saying, hey, I heard that, you can't even say anything like, I heard that there's going to be a halfway house that's, being licensed around the corner, right? And I think you should sell now because the property values are going to be dropping, because they usually do if there is, a halfway house in the area. Anything that's negative, you can't say anything that's discriminating, anything that's negative, nothing. You will get yourself in huge trouble. You want to get suspended? They will suspend you. If you're lucky, that's all they'll do.
I had a question. So, a prospective buyer wants to buy a house, okay? And from what I understand, you can't do this. And say somebody was murdered in the house, okay? You can't disclose that to them, can you?
Okay, so you're right. But this is the but line, okay? When you're out working as a realtor, there are certain ethnic groups, okay, or religious groups, that one of the questions that they're going to ask you before they sign an agreement of sale was, did anybody die in this house? I cannot tell you how many times I've been asked that question. When I was first asked the question, I was like floored, right? Now I already know. And I just laugh and I go, you know what? Maybe, maybe not. I have no way of knowing, because that's not something, that we're obligated to disclose. But if it's really that important to you, maybe you can talk to one of the neighbors, because, neighbors will tell you everything. And it's just
Janet,
not something. Yes.
I had a neighbor that her daughter and her mother were raped in a house. They sold their house. They sold the house and got buyers. After the buyers moved in, they found out, and they tried to sue the realtors.
And what happened?
Well, I moved during all this time. I moved.
Now, anybody can try to sue you for anything, okay? But that doesn't mean that they would have won, okay? And I think ethically, it's probably a fine line. If I thought something really bad happened there, and I don't mean somebody, they had cancer and they died with their loved ones surrounding them. That's not what I'm talking about. But if I think that there's, and I'm going to tell you, this is only my opinion, I believe houses have energy and you can pick up on that energy, right? Mm-hmm. I cannot tell you how many times I've walked in a house and on some level, I can just feel something happened. And then it goes through my head, oh, I wonder if somebody died in this house. Oh, I wonder if this, to the point where I call up the other realtor because I can't stand it. And I can't tell you how many times I'm really right. So now I just trust my instincts, okay? There are houses that you go into and it just feels off and you don't even know why, okay? Mm-hmm. Maybe you could say, does this house feel weird to you? Where, somebody else might feel it and they'll go, yeah, no, I don't want to buy this house. But I'll tell you, I had this happen last year. I walked into the house and it was like, the first thing I'm thinking, oh God, this house, there's something really creepy about this house. But my client turns around and says, I think they were practicing witchcraft here. And I'm like, what? And he says, no, really, Janet, he goes, I can feel it. And I'm like, well, it does feel a little weird, And he goes, I'm telling you, I just know it. He goes, I'm going to look around and see if I can find something. He calls me and says, Janet, get up here right away. You got to see this. There was like the pentagram on the floor. There were all these books on witchcraft and everything. It was like really weird. And I'm looking and I'm going, wow, this is really interesting. And he goes, I'm not buying this house. I'm like, yeah, I can understand why you don't want to buy this house. Okay. You'll have that happen. The question though is, a lot of these houses, if there's been like violent acts or whatever, people the word gets out, I think. All right. Now, if you know about it, maybe you could, discreetly say something like, and if you feel that you should, I'm not telling you not to, but you don't have to disclose all this, but you could say something like, I'm not so sure about this neighborhood. If I was you, I would just do some research, and maybe you might want to check with the local police department. Police department will be happy.
Is that what you've done?
I will do it.
Mhm.
If I thought there was something going on or I knew about something, I might say something like that, or let's say, you'll see in the agreement of sale, there's Megan's Law, like, the link to go to
Right.
and all that. I mean, it's not our job, okay, to like run around looking for, all the people that have committed crimes, against the children in the neighborhood. But if I see somebody that has a lot of children and the neighborhood looks a little, I might say, there are apps. I don't know if you know that, just like nonchalantly. There are apps that you can download into your phone to get an idea of, who's living in your neighborhood. Maybe that wouldn't be a bad idea, right? Or I might say, we're going to be doing an agreement of sale. And the agreement of sale, I'm going to send you a sample just so you know what they look like. And there's a lot of parts in there. And they also even have, information in regards to Megan's Law in case somebody has kids and they decide they want to see if anybody is a registered offender that's registered with the state. I may say something like that. I'm not telling them to do it, right? But I'm telling them if they wanted to, they could. I'm not even really telling them that. I'm just telling them the information is there and why it's there. Now, it's up to them to really, dig in and see if they want to go further. But I've had.
I could tell them like if the house is haunted or something, Janet. Like, yo, the house is haunted. I don't know. Like, I don't. I got tell them like, yo, it's stuff be moving in here, but that's your discretion.
I don't know necessarily if a house was haunted, if that would be a bad thing.
I done heard some stuff about some haunted houses, Janet, like for real, And then like say I'm in there and I'm trying to sell it and I see something move. Do not, I go ahead and still try to sell a house?
Well, let me just tell you
no,
this.
You run.
Yeah.
You run, right, Will?
Yeah, you run.
I would say every man for themselves. And I would, be out of that house so fast, right? They would get the idea real quick. But I'll tell you one thing that did happen. I was in a house showing it, and this was in Germantown, and I opened up the closet door, and I said, these houses have really nice big closets, and there's a guy that's standing there like this in the closet. A squatter.
Oh, a squatter, okay.
Yeah. My client.
So did he scare you?
Well, let me put it to you this way. My client was a real big guy, all right? I pushed him aside, okay? Like he was a sack of cotton. He just went flying. And I ran out of that house so fast. But he comes out and I'm sitting there laughing, right? And he goes, oh my God. He goes, you're really a lot stronger than I thought you were. And I said to him, are you okay? And he goes, yeah. And I said, oh, that's good. I mean, we laughed about it, but now I didn't have to tell him what was going on in that house. I mean, he kind of saw that for himself, but I don't know, getting into some of this is just my opinion or a feeling, which, what does it really mean? I don't have to tell them what I feel unless I think something really did happen there. And, maybe I was concerned. Probably, I would say something to lead them in the right direction. Okay, promotional land sales. I think we talked about this before. And we're finished. Okay, so all good stuff. It is a little, almost 5 of 8, a little bit after that. Why don't you come back at 10 after 8, and then I'm going to set us up to, I wonder if we can do this on Quizlets. And the reason is because everything, pretty much that's in your test is going to be on Quizlets. And if you know everything that's on there, just take the test right away because you're going to pass. If you think you need to study more, the information is there. Unit 12, even if you take the test and you pass, go back and review Unit 12. You're going to need it for your eventual PSI exam. Now, let me just tell you, you can do like amazingly well in the test. Doesn't mean you're prepared yet for your PSI exam. So don't put that note in your head, right? You're prepared for the test. But a lot of what's on this test was probably could show up in your PSI exam. But there will be other additional questions also. So I'm going to continue to grow that PSI exam, the pre-exam study guide. So if I'm going through these chapters and I'm like, they're probably going to ask this, or if I talk to somebody and they say, this is one of the questions that they asked me, I'm going to add that to that as well. So that when you're studying, I know that you're going to be really prepared for when you take your PSI exam. All right, this is all leading up to that. So this is the first part of it. I'm sure you're all going to do well. So be back no later than 10 after 8, and then we're going to delve into the next part of this.
Janet, I'm sorry. I don't know if I missed that part, but did you send the link to the actual test yet? Because I didn't get it.
Are you a member of the class in Quizlets?
Yes.
Then it's in there.
Okay.
Okay, so during your break, log into your Quizlet and you will see it in there. So all of 12 is in there, and the guide is in there also for your, for your study guide for the exam.
So are we taking the test for the exam on Quizlet?
No, it's going to be another site, and I'm sending you the link to you after class.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video and mute while I set this next part up. Okay, so if you did not put your name in the chat that you're present, do so now so I give you credit for being here. Okay, so we're going to go through this. Can everybody see the Quizlets?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to repeat this for those that came in a little bit later. If we do one of the as we go through, when we do the Quizlets, everything that is on the test pretty much is going to be covered in the Quizlets here. But there's other information in here in addition to what's going to be on the test. And I can't tell you what is going to be on the test and what isn't going to be on the test. But if you feel comfortable with all this, and I think you should feel comfortable with at least 85 to 90% of this, nothing new, everything that we've talked about. So if you feel comfortable, I'm going to send you the link after the class. And if you want to stay up and, take the test, feel free to do it. If you think that you want to do the Quizlets again on your own, just to practice before you take the test, and you'd rather take the test on the weekend, by all means do it. Just don't let time go by, because you're going to be learning more information, and I don't want you to fall behind, okay? So let's start. We have more than enough time to do this. All right. So ad valorem taxes and special assessment taxes. Does anybody, before we flip the card over, does anybody want to give me your definition of what you think it is?
These are special taxes that are applied to a property for, I think, special projects or road work, curbs, things of that sort.
Okay, that is correct for the special assessment, but an ad valorem, that's a different type of tax too. So do you know what it pertains to?
It got something to do with according to value.
That's it. Okay, so let's flip it around and read what it says. Ad valorem tax is a tax levied according to the according to the value, and is generally used to refer to real estate tax. Special assessment tax or special taxes on real estate to fund public improvements to the property. Paving of streets, curbs, sidewalks are examples. If the homeowner requests the improvement, it's voluntary, and if the governmental authority, such as the city, imposes the tax, it is involuntary. It could or may not be attached to the property as the lien, but it could be, okay? And the homeowner would they would know, they would already be making, like some kind of a business arrangement with, say, the city or whatever to, to pay off on this over a period of time. If it's on the property, which it could be, then it's settlement that would have to be paid off in full. The general warranty deed. Do we know what a general warranty deed is?
The best type of warranty to have. It includes everything.
It does. And do you want to guess what the covenants are? Okay, so if you remember,
deed restrictions.
Well, okay, so there's covenants that come along, or warranties that come along with that general warranty for the deed. It's the highest degree of ownership. And then you have cession, which is just that, all that means is possession. That's all that really means. And then you have a warrant or a covenant warrant, whatever you want to call it, for encumbrances, that there's no encumbrances other than what they're aware of. Maybe there's like an easement on it, or there's a mortgage on the property. They would be encumbrances, but they're normal encumbrances. So they could be on it. Quiet enjoyment. They're passing along this deed, and there's not going to be any issues with the deed. They're not anticipating any. Further assurance, they're saying anything that needs to be done, we'll take care of it. If something comes up and you need documents signed, you need to provide something, prove something, we're more than happy to do that. And then warranty It just says, you know, this warranty goes all the way back. We warrant it from all the way back to the present. Going forward, there's not going to be any issues. And if there is, we'll be responsible for it, which is why you have your title insurance at settlement. Bilateral, that shouldn't say taxes. Sorry, I meant to say contractor on that one. All right, it should read bilateral and unilateral. I'll have to fix that. Contracts. So does anybody know what a bilateral contract is? And you want to give me an example?
Bilateral is between 2 or more people. Unilateral is 1.
And then an example for bilateral would be like putting in an offer and then being accepted for bilateral, and then unilateral would just be like an offer letter waiting for acceptance.
Yeah, like a purchase offer. So because you got it so right, I'm just going to skip over that. Okay. Broker's responsibilities. Okay, I spelled responsibilities wrong. I have to go and check that too, but okay. Broker's responsibilities. Anybody want to give me an idea, some of the responsibilities the broker has?
Basically just like overseeing the business and the branch offices, supervising the licensees, making sure they're like, you know, doing everything the right way, listing, sales, rentals, things like that.
Okay. That's pretty much right. Responsible for overseeing the main office, the main business and branch offices, hiring and supervising the licensees. Basically, the broker owns all the listings and sales, rentals, everything that's going in the office. Associate broker may also manage a branch office, but is ultimately responsible to the broker. So again, all that responsibility goes back to the broker. Okay, a clause allowing the entire unpaid balance of a mortgage to be due immediately is in the mortgage document. Do you know what that is called?
Acceleration clause?
Yes. See, I told you guys are good.
What did you say?
An acceleration clause.
Acceleration, that's correct.
Okay, acceleration clause. Okay, does anybody know what real property is?
Yeah, so anything, real property is real estate plus the bundle of rights.
That's right.
Yes, girl.
You know what? We're breezing right through these, and you know a lot more than you thought you know. I'm telling you.
Come on, y'all. We got this.
You do. You really do. Subsurface rights. Do you remember what they are? We had that in one of the earlier chapters.
The mineral oil rights.
Yeah, beneath the surface of
Beneath the surface of the property. Anything that's below the surface, the land, down, coal, oil, water, whatever, it's below, it's a subsurface right. Eminent domain.
That's when the government can take over your land.
That's right. They can come in, but they have to give you fair market value. It's the power of the government to take private property for public use, for the good of all. Okay? But they do have to compensate. Anybody remember what dedication is?
That when like the I forget what it's called, the
developer.
Yeah, the developer, they give they donate to the I guess the lot for like the public use for everyone there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're dedicating, okay, they're done with the development and they don't want to be responsible because, you know, the streets, they're still private streets. They still have the onus to maintain them. They're done. They went out. So they'll take that and they'll dedicate it to the township.
Right, okay.
And so now it becomes the township's responsibility to, you know, maintain the street. And sometimes they'll do like big chunk of ground and that they will just dedicate. They could dedicate it to, I guess, even like a homeowners association or whatever, but they're dedicating it for the use of the public. Okay. This is very interesting, and I know at least one of you knows this because we had a big discussion about this. So if you know it,
lead.
POD requires that any house built E4, 1978 discloses what?
Lead levels.
Yes, they have to provide a lead paint disclosure. And the lead paint disclosure is a one-page form, and there's a question in there for the seller, okay? Do you know, are you aware of any lead paint that is in the house? Yes or no? If you are aware of any lead-based paint in the house, do you have any reports in regards to this? Yes or no? That's it. And then the seller, okay, gives this to the buyer through the agents, and then the buyer looks at it and they decide, yes, they want to move forward with the purchase and they want to do a lead paint assessment, or they don't, okay? But it is an important document, and that has to be provided for all sales. Okay, well, we don't need to go through that one, so. Okay, what is that fund called that's created to provide relief to an injured party from illegal or negligent actions of a licensee wherein a judgment has been entered and all resources have been exhausted? We talked about this last night.
Recovery fund?
That's it. What's a seller's property disclosure?
It's basically a form where the seller has to disclose like property conditions and any information that they know.
Yeah, it's about 11 pages. So the form a seller may use to disclose property conditions and information about the property, such as the type of plumbing, the heating system, the type of plumbing twice. I meant to put electric. I'll have to do that one too. Okay, the electric, the age of the roof, the source of the water and sewer, right? If it's well water or public water, and any legal issues that might exist. In Pennsylvania, seller is required to provide to the buyer, unless it's a foreclosure sale or there's a power of attorney, or if it's part of an estate and they don't have actually knowledge of the property because they never lived in it, right? So they can't really give the person that's buying the property the information that they're requesting. But you'll see they're, very detailed, right? So if they ask about the water and the sewer, you would want to know that if it's public, because maybe it's a well and you would want to have the well tested because people are going to be drinking the water. So that would be really important. The age of the roof, right? You would, even though you're going to have, and this is interesting, you're going to have a home inspection done, your client, well, they'll be up on the roof and they're going to do certain things, but they can look at the plumbing. They may recommend that you have a plumber come in if they see something that looks like, an additional set of eyes for somebody that, is maybe better qualified to look at the plumbing. They might recommend that, but they will look for plumbing, but they don't look for like the water. Is it, okay to drink it or not okay to drink it? That would have to be tested by a lab. Okay. Okay.
Calculation.
What does the calculation of using a property assessed value and mills provide?
Real estate taxes.
Yeah, so you remember we talked about that. Sometimes when they're doing an assessment on the property, they may or they may not, they could group the land with the building, or they'll say, we're assessing the building for X amount of dollars and the land is, X amount of dollars. And then they take that assessed value of the property times whatever the rate is for the mills. And then they come up with their own calculation as to, the annual real estate taxes. Okay, this one's going to be a little bit more difficult, I think, but you need to know what it is. So, does anybody remember what CERCLA is? When we were talking,
super fund is a super fund of they they made more than the Sarah fund or something like that. They made it to 8.9 billion or something. Okay.
I think it's like
It's related
one
to
and a
the
half.
environment cleaning.
I know you've been studying, okay, because you would not know that otherwise, because that is something that when you're hearing everything all the time, you wouldn't normally retain that, and that tells me that's pretty good. It's the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act, and it's also called the Superfund, which was established to clean up uncontrolled hazardous waste sites and spills, and the owner can be held responsible for the cleanup. But it can also be retroactive liability that the current owner may go, I had no idea what was going on. They don't want to hear that, okay? If you've got the money, they're going to make you pay for it, and then you can go back and subrogate it. Or you don't have any money, they'll just go back then, and they'll put everybody in line, but they're going to look for their money. But it does have retroactive liability, and I don't remember exactly how much is in there, but it's at least $1.5 million, I think. Does anybody remember anything about the Clean Water Act?
Related to the Safe Drinking Water Act?
Is it like related to HUD?
It's so related to it that that's what it is. It's the Safe Drinking Water Act, and it was passed to protect the public health by regulating the nation's public drinking water supply, and it authorizes the Environmental Protection Agency to set the national standards for our drinking water. Okay. A salesperson's license can be suspended if, just give me a few examples.
They give legal advice?
Yes, we don't want to do that.
If they don't disclose that they are dual, like if there is a dual agency happening.
You know what? They probably could suspend your license for that if somebody was to complain. Yeah. Okay. Anybody want to give me one more?
If they accept any type of bribes or partake in any legal activity?
They may even wind up revoking your license depending on what it is. But yeah, I mean, there's all different reasons. So breaching the rules of advertising is one, such as advertising an owner's property without permission or placing a for sale sign on the property. You're not allowed to do that. And if somebody complains, they could suspend your license for that. Illegal real estate practices such as misrepresentation or fraud, practicing without a license. If somebody turns you in, let's say you have a bunch of files and you didn't renew your license and you're like, well, it's not going to matter, I'll have it renewed within a week. But somebody reports you, you may get your license back, but as soon as they find out about it, you will be suspended. Okay. If they have to make a payment from the recovery fund, the moment they make that payment, your license is suspended. So there's all different reasons why they can suspend your license. Does anybody know what a specific lien is, or you want to give me an example?
They could come after a specific property.
Well, that is true.
Would the workers, when they file a lien against your property because you didn't pay them, is that?
Like the mechanics lien will
Okay.
fall under specific?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Yes.
that's what I meant. Thank you.
Okay, so a mortgage is a specific lien because it's a lien on, your property. That would be a specific lien. A lien affecting or attaching only to a certain identified parcel of land or a piece of property.
Is that the same as voluntary lien?
Well, okay, a voluntary lien is a lien that you agree to. When you go and you sign your mortgage documents and you're signing for like the next 30 years, you're voluntarily doing that. There's not somebody there saying, hey, I want you to sign this right now, okay? And involuntary is now they go to take your house away. You're like, no, please don't do that. Okay, so that you're not agreeing to. You're going to hold steadfast because you want to keep your house.
So it's like a tax lien versus like a second mortgage lien.
Yeah.
Like versus
Right. Now, do you remember we talked about elevation surveys, right? Do you have an idea of when we use an elevation survey?
When you're in a flood area?
You want to lower your flood insurance premium?
That's
A condo, and condo.
That's right. A condo, they use them all the time. That's, you know, they have to submit that with their plan and everything. But yes, they're both right. Owner, you know, wants to lower his flood insurance, and he believes that his house never flooded and he should get some kind of a reduced premium. He may decide to have an elevation survey done at that point, but all condos will have an elevation survey. Amortized loan. Do you know what that is?
A loan that has both principal and interest over a loan period.
Don't forget to come and pick up your
Okay, and what else can you tell me about it?
And it's always like the same amount.
A loan done by at the end.
It's the most common.
That's right. And this isn't a test question, but do you remember what a mort means?
To die.
Dead.
Or dead. Yeah. Dead.
That's it. Okay. A loan in which the principal as well as the interest is payable in equally monthly payments over the term of the loan, at which time the loan ends and the principal and interest are fully paid.
Great. Amort.
Okay. A deed offering the highest degree of ownership transferred at settlement. What kind of a deed would that be?
Warranty
Would it be
deed.
General warranty.
A warranty deed, the highest degree of ownership, right? With all the warranties that come with it. We talked about that in one of the other questions earlier.
Is it a warranty or general warranty?
It's a warranty deed. We were
Right.
talking about a deed.
Right, okay.
Highest degree of ownership is a warranty deed.
And you said the warranty, I'm sorry, I missed that part again.
Okay, the highest degree of ownership when transferring a deed will be a warranty deed.
Right.
Okay. The legal description of a property. Do you remember we talked about different ways?
Meets and bounds.
Thank you. The one thing they have in common is they always start at one beginning point, go all the way around, and eventually they come back to that same starting point. That's what we use here in Pennsylvania. Title insurance policy. Do you remember what that was for?
They protect the new owner, basically. It's, so they search and make sure that there's no liens or anything on the property or judgments.
And that they're all going to be paid at settlement. So it presents a marketable title, basically. So it insures the owner and the mortgagee, who is the lender, against a loss by reason of undisclosed defects. And it does not include exclusions. However, when they're doing the property search, if there's like a mortgage, there's mechanic liens, whatever, all that will be taken care of at settlement. Seller is obligated to pay that. And the insurance gives the person that's purchasing the property the assurance that they're buying a deed with no cloud on it, no judgments, free and clear title, and it's going to be a marketable title. Does anybody remember the difference between intestate and testate?
Intestate is when you die without, when you don't leave a will when you die. Intestate is when you do.
Yes. Escheat. Anybody remember what that means?
When you don't leave a will and there's nobody behind to take it,
There's no heirs.
There's no heirs, correct. Okay, the state takes the property upon an owner's death if there is no will and no heirs exist. Restrictive covenants.
Is that those?
Private.
Okay, it's a statement written into the property deed that restricts the use of the property in some way or another. Okay, it's a restriction on the deed.
And that runs with the land, right?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Okay, so characteristics of land. We talked about this maybe in the first or second. It was very early on. And land is what? Do you remember something?
The
space, the surface, and the space above, and the land below.
Okay,
Parcel
so
of land.
well, land. Okay, there's a characteristic to land.
Indestructible. Is indestructible.
Indestructible, yes.
Uniqueness, non-homogeneity.
Unique, yes. And one other thing.
Immobile.
Immobility.
That's it. Indestructible, immobile, unique. Got it. Supply and demand. Anybody want to tell me how supply and demand works?
Just like when you talk about a buyer's market and a seller's market kind of thing.
All right.
Is it like
another question, and then you can relate it back to real estate. Okay, it's the winter, and there's a whole lot of coats in the store, and people are not going in the store right now, and all of a sudden, it's getting hot out. You got a large supply. What do you think the person that owns the store is going to do?
Want to drop the price of the coat?
Price, yeah.
Reduce the price.
Right, because the supply is much higher than what the demand is. So it's got a tremendous amount of inventory, but they don't have buyers, and so they're going to drop the price, right?
So that technically, like when it's a seller's market, a lot of the prices are higher, and people are offering more on properties, correct? Is it the same?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So right now, let's talk about supply and demand. There are not enough houses out there right now. They're just not. Inventory is very, very low. There are buyers all over the place. We are putting in 5, 6, 8 different offers. Everyone's trying to get the house. Do you think they're negotiating for a lower price?
No.
Do you think they're going over what the seller is asking?
Yeah, of course.
Insanely over. Okay. Example of supply and demand. We are living it. Okay. Does anybody remember what is different about a spot survey?
It has actual I guess drawing or picture of the property on it.
Shows the size and shape of the
Okay. So what is on the survey?
Like improvements.
The legal description.
Oh, well, you're all kind of right. Okay. This is what it is. You have a survey that has that whole legal description going on, from the point of beginning here, going so many degrees there, so many feet there, blah, blah, blah. But in addition to it, it has any man-made improvement, a house, a garage, a barn, anything that is on the property that is a man-made improvement is also included on that. Okay. So regular survey plus man-made improvements. Their measurements, where they're located. The whole thing is going to be on there. Advice, they must refer to attorney, or they can be held liable and convicted. What can happen to them?
Lose their license.
I'm sorry, what?
Your license could be revoked.
That's one thing. What else?
Can they go to jail?
They can be sued.
Fined.
You can be fined $1,000.
Yes. Well, this here, the answer that we were looking for is 2,500, but it could be anywhere between 2,500 to 5,000. And of course, imprisonment. depending on if it's an initial. Okay, so initially, I guess it depends on, what you're doing and how the party was injured, but it could be anywhere, from 3 months initially, and then if it's anything above and beyond that, then it's a felony, and of course, it's much more serious than that. Okay, realtors cannot provide legal advice. Okay, we just went and did that one, and we're already up to 30. Broker license requirements. Does anybody remember what the requirements are to become a broker?
At least 21 years old.
3
Years.
3 years of a sales
Yeah.
in classes.
and the 240, what is it, credits?
240 hours, which equals 16 credits.
That's the same thing as the associate broker, right? They would need the same amount, right? You said
Yeah.
earlier? Okay.
Yes.
So they
So
got to
this,
be 18 and older?
21.
I'm sorry, what?
21 and older?
21 years or older, and then you have to sit for the exam, right? Okay, you own a property and you're by a river or a stream or whatever. What kind of rights do you have?
Riparian.
Riparian, and I always remember it R&R, river riparian. What does an owner have? What rights does an owner have if he lives by a large body of water, such as an ocean?
Littoral.
Literal.
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 Okay, lien priority. Does anybody want to
First
tell me?
in, first out.
It goes by
Okay.
who, basically who records it first.
But there's one exception. What is it?
Real
General
estate
Taxes.
taxes.
IRS.
Tax lien.
Tax liens always take priority. Other than that, you're right, first in, first out. Pennsylvania practices the right of redemption for mortgage payments that have been missed. If the owner fails to bring the mortgage current and the lender reserves the right to accelerate the payment in full, what's the process called?
Foreclosure.
Yes, and the home is sold then how?
Through sheriff stuff.
That's right.
And they have the 1 year, right? If once it's sold through sheriff's sale to try to recover it, is it? Or no?
That would be the right of redemption, and I really don't know because it varies by state, and it might even vary by the type of sheriff sale.
Okay.
If it's a tax sale, I think they have up to a year. If it's a foreclosure, I don't think so. Okay, anybody want to explain the primary and secondary mortgage market?
Primary is the old traditional bank way. Secondary, they basically buy the loans off of the primary banks, which is like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and Ginnie Mae.
Yeah, and that's basically it. So the primary lender is the one that, you walk in or you go online and, you go to, I don't know, TD Bank site and you fill out the application and all that. So, they consist of commercial banks, savings and loan institutions, mutual savings banks. So they're all considered the primary market. They're the people that you're going to go, you're going to meet them face to face, you're going to write out your check every month, you're going to send it to them. Then along comes the secondary market, who are the investors like Ginnie Mae, Ginnie Mac, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, and all of them. So they turn around and they buy up these notes. So they allow if they want to, they can allow that particular lender that they're buying the note from to continue servicing the mortgage. So homeowner may not even notice the difference. Maybe they did get something 10 years later, they totally forgot about it because they just keep paying the same bank. But that doesn't mean that they really own it. They could be servicing it, but the owner is really whoever, the investor would be. And then they're servicing the loan. So of course they collect a fee for that. Does anybody remember what periodic tenancy is?
Month to month.
Yeah, it could be something like you have a lease And at the end of the year, there's a selection. They either convert it to another year lease or they're going to go month to month. And maybe they are in the process of buying a house. They've already spoke to the landlord and they said, listen, I know I'm going to be buying a house within the next 6 months. I don't want to go under another year lease, another 2-year lease. So is that okay if I stay month to month? That would be your periodic tenancy. Okay, for a specific duration, successive intervals until one of the parties gives notice. All right, easement and gross. Anybody remember what that is? And I'm gonna go change that easement. Okay, easement and gross. Anybody want to give me an example?
This was like the train
Or the roadway?
under the house, or like a utility company.
The utility companies, they're the ones that primarily, you would see easement and gross with. Could be electric company, cable company, they maintain some kind of an easement so they can go and they can service, the properties. Usually they're like right on the perimeter of wherever, the perimeter of the property. Now, in your PSI exam, know your easements. I would almost guarantee they're going to ask you a question about the different types of easements. Anybody remember easement by necessity?
That's when you have to, like, someone has to have access from their house to the street, and if they have to go to your property, then that would be the easement, right? That's what it is. Like if someone's house is behind yours.
Right. So they're landlocked.
Right, landlocked.
Land there, but I mean they have to be able to get out to the street.
Right.
They can't live in their house forever. So the court would rule in their favor that they would be entitled to an easement by necessity. And if you see anything that says, what kind of an easement is it if, a parcel is landlocked, right? It's an easement by necessity.
Is that like access to a certain, part of somebody's land, like where they have the wires and all that?
Where they have wires, you mean?
Like the cable lines and the phone lines and all of that.
That would be an easement and gross.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's
okay. Appurtenant easement. Anybody remember what that is?
Wasn't that the example where you gave with the being able to run a driveway on somebody's property to get to the neighbor's land?
Yeah, I mean that would be an example, but an easement and gross is the next to the ownership of one parcel and allows the owner the use of the neighbor's land. So let's say I own a property and I subdivide the property and I'm on a lake. I want to keep my view, but I want to subdivide also, and I want to sell it for prime dollar. So I might allow other people to use the lake, and I might on their deed give them an easement to go through my property so that they can get to the lake. That would be an example.
Like a bike trail behind the house.
Bike trail behind the house. And you own the house, or maybe it's a path to get to the bike trail.
Yeah.
Okay, that would work. What happens to a mortgage after a property is purchased? You go to settlement, you have a mortgage.
Is it sent to the recorder of deeds office? Is it to record?
Yes, but where is it recorded?
County that is in.
City Hall.
The county, yeah.
The county where the property is located. What is the purpose of the Pennsylvania Real Estate Commission?
Keep things in order.
Set standards.
Right.
Protect the public.
That's it. It does all of them. Okay, protects the public, sets standards for licensees, holds hearings in case somebody complains about a licensee, Let me see. The members might meet because they're reviewing real estate practices. They can suspend and revoke licenses. They can fine licensees for inappropriate practices. All of them are right answers.
Did you mention that we had to know how many people sat on, I guess the board
It was
before?
11, right? Was it 11?
Yet, but it is 11, and we will get to that.
Okay.
Does anybody remember what tenants in common is?
Isn't that when it's a death in the family and the siblings have ownership? They take over ownership. They gotta share it.
Okay, and the answer to that is actually yes, but there's more to it. So tenants in common.
Yes, what
Oh,
James was about to say, they can have undivided share of interest.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Interest. Yeah, there you go.
Let me explain to you what it is. You could have, let's say you have 3 people, right? And they each own a third of a property. Now, one of them passes away. Doesn't matter if it's A, B, or C, but one of them passes away. So what do you think? Let's say it's C that passes away. What do you think happens to that parcel that was owned by C, or that portion of the real estate that was owned by C when they pass away?
Would it go to their heirs?
It goes, yeah,
Right.
just that interest piece.
That has to
Right.
be
That's
equally.
it. It goes, that's all you need to know. It goes to the heirs.
Okay.
And they can will it, or they'll inherit it, but it belongs to the heirs, basically. Sorry. What about tenants in the entirety?
That's
For
for
married
husband and
couples.
wife. Yeah. Right of survivorship.
Right.
Right. You have to be married in order to have it. That's the only way you can have it. If you're not married, you can't have it. It doesn't have to be in a will. It doesn't have to be willed. You know, like I own a house, something happens to me, my husband now owns the house. I don't have to have a will. He automatically owns the house. What about joint tenancy with right of survivorship?
So if the one person dies, the next person that's on the deed will receive the property?
Right, and that has to be on the deed. It has to be written that way. Okay, John and Mary Smith with right of survivorship, or maybe they're not married, so maybe it's John Smith and Mary Jane, somebody. Okay, with right of survivorship. So if something happens to the one party, the other person, you know, will automatically inherit the house. Okay, defeasible fee. Anybody remember?
Interest in.
Okay, fee simple absolute interest in land that is capable of being defeated or terminated upon the happening of a specific event, such as when a property is sold. Okay, defeasible, defeat, terminate. Fixtures. Good old fixtures. I might have asked this one backwards. Okay. Items of personal property that are attached or next to real property can be removed if all parties agree.
It's a fixture.
What? It's a fixture, yes. This is going to be us again later on, a better question. I don't know what I was thinking about when I wrote that one, but okay, that is what it is. The environmental impact statements, going back to the environment.
They have to, something has to be written to show how a federally funded project will impact something along those lines. Basically that's what it is.
That's right. Federally funded, that's the operative word there, but okay, so a detailing of a proposed policy's environmental effects, which agencies are required to file with the EPA every time they propose to undertake a policy that might be disruptive to the environment. It's required for all federally funded projects. Anybody remember what a quit claim deed is?
Sorry.
What else? No, go ahead.
That's like they do it to, is the lease protective? And so you'll do it like with somebody in your family or like a close friend or something?
Or like from are those the ones you get from like a sheriff's
Yeah, usually,
sale too, or am I mistaken?
No, it could very well be. When deed is passing, let's say I'm adding my house, but it could also be, let's say there's a squatter in there and they want the courts to rule in their favor because they were open, notorious, and everything else. They've been there for the 21 years and all that. They may be issued the quit claim deed. Now they own the property, but all they know is that they own the property. They don't know what else they got with the property, but they own the property, right? They could be getting other liens and whatever else that comes with it. It has the least amount of protection.
So they didn't do like a title search on that one?
Well, I think if you're a squatter and you've been like just hanging out there, in the woods, on somebody's property and using it, and, I think you're just so happy to get the land, probably you don't even care.
Right.
But I'm going to tell you, in reality, you always make sure your clients, if they're doing cash or whatever, mortgage companies will make you, if you're doing a cash sale, you just tell your client they absolutely have to have a title search done. Because title companies, they can just do the deeds and sign them over. But you don't want that to happen to your client. You'll always make sure that they have a title search done. Okay? Otherwise, you could get in trouble. And you don't want that to happen. And I've seen it happen. Anybody have an idea what a subagent is?
Works under the agent?
Like a co-agent?
Well, yes. Like a co-broker would be a subagent.
Okay.
Or a co-worker, maybe they're working on your behalf. They would be a subagent, okay? It's an agent appointed by another agent with the knowledge and consent of the principal. An example would be a co-operating broker who is a sub-agent to the listing broker. So you have the listing broker, they take the listing contract, and they basically, now you have the buyer's broker, and they have an alliance there. But who's in charge is going to be the listing broker, because they're the money man. They're the bag man, basically, right? And then they're cooperating with the other broker.
Right now.
Variance. Does anybody know what a variance is and when we use them, or what they're about, or how you get them?
They like go against like prohibited laws or something. Like they basically let you. Never mind. I don't know.
She's on the right track.
I don't know how to
You
word
were
it.
good. So keep going. You were doing good.
Like basically, if it's a law, they'll let you maneuver through that law, basically. Like, and you could still whatever. I don't know the words, but you get what I'm saying.
Is it for like
It's an exception from the zoning.
like a zoning? Like say like if it's like a residential or
Yep.
Is that the example you were given with the railroad by any chance?
Okay,
You guys
what it
remember?
is, okay, I'll give you an example. Let's say, all right, let's say I just bought a property and it has a house on it, but it's commercial, and that means I can't live in the house. But maybe at one time somebody lived in the house, but it's still zoned commercial. I hire an attorney and he, does what he needs to do. He goes before the zoning board and he'll ask for a variance so that I have the ability to live in the house, and now they will rezone the house as residential. It's back to commercial, or it could be as long as the house stands. And I'm going through this right now with a client. He bought a house that had a variance on it because there was a house there. Everything around him is all commercial. Don't ask me why, but it gets in his head, hey, my land will be worth more than it is now if I tear down the house. So he goes and he friggin' has the house torn down. Well, whoever tore the house down never got a permit, number one. But number two, it's coming up that it's zone residential. There's no way that it's zone residential. It could be zone residential if they take the exact footprint and they build another house on there. We're going to try to sell commercial, right? Now, this is the fine line. Okay, so if a person buys it and it's not zoned as commercial and they decide they're going to put a business on there, that's a problem, because now if they say it's residential, he's not going to be able to put a business up there. Now he's going to have to get a variance. All right. So I'm taking the listing contract. However, boy, when I put that in the MLS, I'm going to put something in there. May currently be zoned as residential in a commercial area. And I'll put something in there that, you know, the buyer's agent must do the due diligence to determine, you know, exact zoning for that particular lot. I tried to find out the other day, and boy, they gave me a lot of pushback. So I have to go Friday back to the township, and they're going to let me see the file, and I'll have to try to figure it out. Now, the seller has totally guaranteed me that, no, I'm wrong. It's not zoned residential anymore. It is really commercial. However, if I look at it in public records, it still comes up as residential. All right. So there are variances in there, and I got to figure out how do I even find those variances. I'm not sure even. But that is what it is. It is somebody going before the zoning board and asking for the property to be used in a different way than what it's currently zoned for. Right? They would have to get a variance. So permission obtained from the zoning authorities to build a structure or conduct a use that is expressly prohibited by the current zoning laws, an exception from the zoning ordinance. Okay. Oh, an example. I gave you an example before this. My parents were selling a house, owned the house forever, built as a duplex, always was a duplex, could never be anything but a duplex. And they kept insisting that it wasn't really a duplex, that it had to be a residential, single family residential home. Will never happen in a million years. We had to get a variance. Pain in the neck to do, and cost money, and it took a while to do it. They don't make it easy. Okay, form explaining agency relationships provided to prospective client when meeting for the first time. You have to get this.
Consumer notice.
That's it. Okay. What's a foreclosure?
When you don't pay that mortgage and the bank's for property.
And they can't wait to get their little grubby hands on that.
Nope.
Okay. It's a legal procedure whereby property used as a security for a debt is sold to satisfy the debt in the event of default in payment of the mortgage note or default of other terms in the note. So basically, you don't pay your bills, they give you a notice. Still don't pay your bills, you don't call them, you don't make any other arrangements. That's it. They will start foreclosure proceedings. They tack on all these different fees and court cost and, you know, interest, attorney's fees, whatever. You know, by the time they get done with you, they are rolling you over. And even if you wanted to exercise your right of redemption, maybe they've just made it so impossible. And now they will go to foreclosure. It goes, you know, to a sheriff's sale, and you will no longer own your property.
And you have a per diem.
I'm sorry, what?
Then you have like a per diem also. I worked in doing judgments prior. They would tack on that per diem.
Oh, they do. They do. It could be just a small, maybe a little amount they start with, and by the time it's just like snowballs. It's awful.
If they ain't respect the right of redemption, can I just go file for bankruptcy?
Okay. Yes. It will buy you time. You could do that.
Once it's past judgments, you can. I worked in judgments, and a lot of people will. Once I would file the judgment, they will file for bankruptcy before it goes to the sheriff's sale.
This is after, like, say, this is after they don't respect the right of redemption. Then I could do that. Like, I'm like, all right, y'all don't respect the right of redemption. I'm gonna file for bankruptcy. That's that. It works like that.
If you file for bankruptcy, okay, there's different types of bankruptcy. So you really need to have your client consult with an attorney to make sure that they're going to file for the right type of bankruptcy. Because some of the bankruptcies, and I don't remember which one it is, but some of them just let them take whatever their debt they have, and then they make plans on paying everybody back. And others, they do a full bankruptcy, and then they just wash away all their debt.
Which is the chapter 7, I think, and
Yeah, I used to know them. There was chapter 7, 11, and I think 9 or something. But we don't give out legal advice anyway, so you don't really need to know that. Okay, does anybody remember what severalty ownership is?
Hey,
Operative
Jan,
word.
Jan, you skipped that pre-licensed education law, didn't you?
Did I? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Okay. Does anybody remember pre-licensing education law, what it is about?
that's like with Jersey, they're not reciprocal to us regarding education.
Goes by state.
Okay, that's it. Every state is different. Every state. And so in Pennsylvania, we do have a law that governs the type of education that we have to do. And so we need to do our CE credits. And in the state of Pennsylvania, every 2 years, when you renew your license before it's renewed, you have to do 14 credit hours. Okay, that's what it is in our state, in Pennsylvania. But you're right, it's dictated by every state, all different. It's their, the education requirements. Severalty ownership. Anybody remember what that is?
Sole ownership.
Ownership by one.
Yeah, it could be by one person or a corporation, right? Ownership by one person or a single legal entity such as a corporation. Assessment. We kind of talked about this. Does anybody remember what it is?
It's like an evaluation of the property for to determine the property taxes.
That's it. Evaluation of a property for purpose of determining property taxes. Land and improvements may be assessed separately, and then assessment may be joined to determine your annual real estate taxes, which they will take that assessment, times it by the mills to come up with whatever the taxes are going to be. You want to explain to me about a counter offer to an agreement of sale?
That would constitute as like a new contract and it would void the old agreement, right?
That is absolutely right. Good. That's it. That's what I was looking for. Okay. So rejects.
On fire.
I'm telling you, rejects the original offer. This isn't really that hard, is it? Is anybody finding this hard?
No, you just got to think.
You have to think. Rejects the original offer made by the prospective buyer and presents a new offer to the buyer from the seller. If it is agreed to and it is signed and dated, then a valid offer is executed and the sale moves forward. We spoke about this dedication. I might have put this in here twice. So.
When the developer gives the property to the community, or
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was an earlier question.
It was. I guess I really like that question. Condemnation. Does anybody remember what that is?
That's like when they act out the eminent domain.
That's it.
They have to be compensated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. Does anybody remember injunctive relief, what that was?
Injunction is a court order to stop something, right?
It is. So you want to give me an example?
Like when you're trying to either build something on your property and like a neighbor wants to oppose it or something like that.
No, it has to be something that's already going on. So you haven't done anything yet. So does anybody want to try it? Another example?
Can it be like kind of like something what Mia was saying? Like if you're starting to like do demo on a property and like you didn't go to LNI to get like zoning permits and stuff, then they could come and stop it. Is that an example?
No. Okay. So do you remember we were talking about, you know, you have a house in a community and you have a walking path.
The easements.
Yes, and then you have some neighbor who decides they're going to do something else with the area, and you know it's built in to like your HOA agreement, your homeowners association agreement, that you know people can't use that for their own purpose, even though it's all the way in the back of their house.
With the 21 years, was that with the 21 years that you were saying that if they go to court, if they've been doing it for a long time, the court might grant it to them or something like that?
No, that's something different. We were
Okay.
Yeah, that was something different. This is just okay. Your neighbor is doing something they're not supposed to be doing, and it's not in conformity with whatever the homeowners association rules are. And so, instead of running over and starting to duke out your neighbor, okay, instead you would go to the court to ask for relief, and you would ask them to file an injunction for an injunctive relief. Okay. Maybe they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing somewhere on the property, right?
I think we had an example where the neighbor was planning like doing some sort of like
That's
plantation
what I
on
was
the
looking for. Thank you.
on the pathway, and then the neighbors didn't like that and went and got
Yes, that's it.
an order.
Yep. Okay. Oh, yes. I talked about Centralia. I just had to put this in here. Sorry, but it's a sinkhole in Centralia where all, you know, the mining and everything is burning and
Mine subsidence?
Thank you. Okay. Sued for specific performance. Anybody remember what that was?
When a seller like breaches an agreement,
Right. And
you
then
can
what
kind of
happens?
force you can kind of force the sale to still go through by doing the suit.
Okay. You being who?
The buyer.
Right. And he can take them to court and ask the court to
Force the seller.
yes, to sell their house. Good example. Great example, actually. Okay, if a commercial broker does not receive payment for services rendered, they may do what? Commercial broker does not receive payment for services rendered.
They can put
lien.
a lien on the property, right? Like a
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Well, file a lien on the real property for payment.
is it called is that lien called a broker's lien? Is that a thing? Or am I making that up?
I like it. I like your reasoning, but I've never heard of it before called.
Okay, never mind.
But that's okay. And I gotta go back and redo some of these. It's not condominiums, it's condominiums. Typo, sorry. But does everybody know what a condominium is? And what do you own when you own a condominium?
You own
The inside, right?
Okay, you own, okay, what do you own?
Within the walls
Listen, there you go.
And what else?
and the common areas?
Share
Sidewalks.
the pool.
covered.
Yeah.
Right,
Common
you
areas,
own,
right?
you own part of the,
Percentage of
yeah, of the common elements. Fee simple absolute. Talked about this early on.
It's like the highest type of ownership.
Yours forever.
Yeah, and that's what you're going to see on the agreement of sale. You're going to see, you know, that the sale is the transfer of real estate in, you know, fee simple. It will be right there on the second page. All right, the maximum possible estate or right of ownership of real property continuing forever. And then 65, This is our last one. If an owner allows a tenant to operate a pizza parlor and booths are installed, does the tenant's property become part of the real estate?
Yes.
It depends
Trade
on
fixture.
It depends, yeah. It depends on if it's a trade fixture
Yes.
and what the lease says.
Well,
And
yes.
if it can be removed, I think.
Okay, that's it. If it doesn't destroy the property, okay. Let's say they come in, they put like a lot of booze, tables, counters, and whatever, and it can be even something that can be easily removed. You could just patch a wall or whatever. They could take it with them. It was theirs to begin with. But let's say they come in and now they, let's say they have ovens built on site and they can't even take these ovens out, and now they're bolted to the ground, and that really would become part of the real estate. So, it depends. But if it's anything that's like easily moved or doesn't leave any damage, it still remains personal property.
But if they leave it there after the lease, then does it become property of the property owners?
Well, yes. However, if they just leave it because they leave and they walk out, that doesn't mean it might become the property owners, but that doesn't mean that it's not personal property still. Okay. Somebody doesn't have any money, or somebody dies, and or they haven't paid their rent and they just like up and leave, and they leave all their stuff behind. Okay, so the landlord might decide to take them to court and get a judgment, and in order to to get money from the judgment, they may decide to have the sheriff auction all whatever is in there off. It's still considered like personal property. It hasn't become annexed to the real estate. All right. And I think that's it. It would be like, what's the intention, and how, in what way was it affixed? If it's a trade fixture, is it personal property? I mean, I would consider like booths, counters, anything that can be moved around or easily, moved out, that would still be personal property. Okay, you did all well, and I don't want anybody leaving yet, unless, if you put in the chat room that you're here, because I didn't take roll yet, so make sure that you're putting your name in there so I give you credit. I don't want anybody missing any time. I gotta go and grab a sheet so I can mark everybody present. You can leave as long as you entered in your name in the chat room. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Are you sending us the exam now?
Probably in the next 15 minutes. Are you up for taking it?
Yes, Hunty. We are ready, okay? We're on fire over here.
You're all stoked, right? It was really good and everybody did well. And
thank you. It was very helpful.
Yeah, I think if you answered them and you felt really confident, I do think you should take your exam right away.
Yeah, a few of us want to take it tonight.
Yeah, I want to
All
take
right. If you, had some anxiety and you didn't feel, I know some of you were sick and, you just feel like you're not quite sure, you need a little bit more time, go over the Quizlets again and take it by the weekend. Don't let it hang out there over your head. You don't have to take it, but I really recommend that you do. You're not doing yourself a favor by, not taking it. And the worst scenario, you don't pass and you'll get a link and you'll be able to take it again. Okay. I don't think it was terribly hard. It's information that came from different chapters, or different units going all the way back. But I could tell that you've all been studying, because you really, some of those ones I'm like, wasn't so sure if you would remember them or not, but you definitely were studying and it showed. So if you want to just leave, you can. I'm going to do a roll real quick, and then I'm going to work on getting the link out to you. So why don't you go take a break, get a cup of coffee, relax a few minutes, come back, look in your email.
What are we going to go over tomorrow, Janet?
Tomorrow we move on to a different class. It's going to be your real estate practice class. Your fundamentals is over. We're done.
Okay.
Okay, you're halfway there.
So we basically just completed the 30 hours, right?
Well, I didn't count them. You're halfway there. So you need 75 hours. you had to do at least 30 hours. Okay, now I'm going to tell you with this second part, we're not going to be doing 2 chapters, you know, every night that we meet. A lot of these are going to be just 1 chapter a night. Okay, but there's
How
a
many
lot of
questions are on the
information.
test?
55, you have an hour and 15 minutes.
And you have to have how many to pass?
75%.
Okay.
But if you don't pass, you'll just do it again. I mean, I think if you get stuck, you're going to know where you're getting stuck.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it was me, I would just take and get it over with.
Do you know if we're like able to like skip a question and go back to it? Or you have to answer it right there?
You know what? I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't taken it. I thought about taking it myself, but I haven't taken it, so I just don't know. Okay.
Janet, are the questions asking kind of like to define or like the terms, or is it more related around examples and naming what that example is?
I'm going to say probably both. It's multiple choice. Okay. Like here, we're looking for terms and everything, but a lot of this is going to be multiple choice. And if you could answer the ones that you answer tonight, you will have absolutely no problem on the multiple choice. They will just like pop out at you.
Okay, and just like a side note question for the state exam, is it going based off of the book that we're going through, like the terms and vocabulary? Just because I've seen like different like YouTube videos and flashcards and stuff that the language or the vocabularies used are a little different.
Okay, there will be nothing in your state exam that is not in this book.
This side.
Okay. So as we go through and we go through the real estate practice, I'm going to continue, you know, building the Quizlets, right? So hopefully that will help you get through the second part of this. And then you'll have these Quizlets to go back to, and I'm going to leave them live for you. So when you go to do your PSI exam, you can go back and you can go through them. And chapters 1 through 5, I'm going to have to write them still. So, you know, I'll go back to them. But it may not even be until later in the class. I don't know. But I will get them done for you. I promise you, you'll have them. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Good luck, everyone, on your test.
Yeah, good luck, everybody. So I'm going to leave
Now, the link is going to come where?
into your email.
Okay.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Give me like 15 minutes.
All right.
All right.
Thanks again for the
All right,
Quizlets
see you
too.
tomorrow.
You're welcome. All right. I'll see you all tomorrow. Good luck.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey,
Thank you.
Janet, do we get our results as soon as we take it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a good night. Thank you.
All right. Good night. See you all tomorrow. Come on. I just, well, I got 15 minutes worth of work and I'm done. Okay.